Welcome, everyone, tonight to the Normal America Show. Tonight, I have a guest. With the Trump administration, it seems like there's a different legal challenge every day. And so, friend of the show, Ryan Mullally, who is an attorney, has agreed to grace us with his presence once more, try to sift through some of the legal stories we have for the next hour here. Ryan, always fantastic to hear from you. I'm so glad you could join us tonight.
I'm grateful to be back. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I brought prizes with me in honor of your new gig.
Okay.
So this is a jar of baby Aquaphor, very soothing on the skin. And I just want to point out how you can open it with one hand. Now, if your boss is interested, this is a very reasonable product, and I can hook them up.
Now, wait a minute, though. Let me ask you, can that lid get greasy sometimes, making it difficult to open? Is that a potential issue?
There is a risk. It's kind of like a Vaseline-type product for babies. So if you're not careful with it, it could get greasy, and then, I don't know, you'd have Jargate 2.0.
I'm contractually obligated to let everyone know because a lot of people didn't understand. I did not get fired yesterday. It was a bit. So I hope no one took it to heart too much. I'm enjoying my time working for the Crucible and enjoying my time streaming. It leads us into sort of the first topic that I had a question for you about. So in my world of things, people that are more of Trump supporters, one of the big stories is sort of the cover-up of Biden's cognitive health. But one way that it's sort of legally potentially having ramifications is allegedly there's going to be investigations into this auto pen. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like it's something like this. Even though the president does have the ability, basically almost unfettered, I think, according to the Constitution, to issue pardons, that power lies solely with him. And so therefore, if he wasn't the person that was actually doing this, then those, I don't know if that's a crime for someone else to use that auto pen, or if it's just that those pardons would be null and void. What do you think about this story? Is there any potential legal ramifications there, or is it just a political matter?
I think it's really a political matter, and I'll tell you why. It's not that the theory has no merit. If like any legal document, if you can prove that the person who signed it had no idea what, they didn't know what day of the week it was, they thought they were an astronaut, they're seeing colors. Yeah, they're non compos mentis. They're not. They don't have the power to execute the document, and that could have a range of legal ramifications. And given what we know about Biden, there should be inquiries, there should be investigations, there should be Senate hearings. But the reason it'll never come to anything is executive privilege. You're going to call people up and they're going to say, could Joe Biden remember your name? Did he know what document he was signing? And they're going to say executive privilege. I can't tell you that information. And honestly, it should be privileged. The Trump administration should say it's privileged. Like, I don't think anybody really wants to live in a world where you can open the door and force people to give insider information about how they were advising the president. So probably this turns into a political show, but it's going to be a very good political show, and one that I think is worth doing because, I mean, quite frankly, if the president was actually mentally incapacitated, which we don't know, but it's not outside the realm of possibility, that is an enormous scandal. That's bordering on a coup. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, I thought, I agree with you totally on this. I thought that for me, what it would come down to, just quite simply as a layman, would be this. The only way that this would be a legal matter would be if, like, Joe Biden had no clue. He was either such a vegetable or he had no clue that this was done. The problem is, they could just ask Biden. And although I do think that he's mentally diminished, he certainly has moments of clarity where he would be able to say, yeah, I was okay with that. And to me, that's the end of the scandal, because I don't think that there should be a forcing of like, well, who advised you when and how did you make this decision? To me, I think the pardon power is pretty absolute for a reason. And I think that it's risky to sort of, because once you cross that line, well, if Trump issues pardons, right, there's going to be people that say, well, we don't think he was competent. We want to get to the bottom of his last days in office. Exactly what was he talking about? We're going to subpoena records. So, yeah, for me, unless Joe Biden would come out and say, yeah, I too wondered why those pardons happened. If that happened, then I think obviously you're talking a different matter. But I obviously don't see that coming. So I think you're right, though. It does weigh in. The reason they're framing this legally, I think they know they won't win these challenges, but it becomes a political scandal, which gets into the legitimate political story, which is the cover up that we saw from almost all areas inside the Biden administration. Is there any like legal ramifications just on that note? Like, if it turns out that there are people that knew that he wasn't competent enough to carry out his duties and they failed to inform, Congress or other people, is there anything that's like possible legal matters there?
Yeah, potentially, yes. They're not exactly like slam dunk cases, but the law, one of the crazy things about our country where it stands right now is we have so much law on the books that you can find a way to make just about anything illegal. Like, I was looking at this today, and we have laws that make it so that federal employees, not elected officials, but federal employees can't use government resources for partisan purposes. So if you find out that one person who wasn't a political appointee, but was actually a federal employee, came out and said, no, he's fit as a fiddle, right? That's technically a Hatch Act violation.
Okay.
Or if you find, one person who filled out medical paperwork or like a kid's medical history on some kind of like insurance document and they signed their name, but they lied because they left out all this stuff about Joe. That could be an issue. But I tell you what I would love to have happen, because these are kind of tic-tacky charges,
sure.
Let's be honest. What I would love to have happen, and I think it would make Trump look good historically, is he calls an end to the season of political prosecution. You have the investigations, you dirty some people up, you have the show, and at the end, he just pardons everybody. And then it's on them. You can reject a pardon, but if you reject a pardon, now who's the one who's really playing politics? Mm-hmm. And if he pulls that move and says, okay, like I think you guys did wrong, but I'm willing to move on if you are, that I think would actually maybe move us out of this era of political prosecutions, which I don't know about you, but I think it ends in tears. I don't think this is a good look long term. We've got to stabilize the ship, because if you do it, yeah, they prosecuted him. There's going to be some retaliation. But if it keeps going on vendetta style, the damage it'll do is exponential.
See, I completely disagree with you. I think that the prosecutions that they've set is not near enough. They need to do it to every single person, even the smallest crime, because here's what will happen. If they went through with that strategy, you said they'd say, thank you so much. Now we're throwing you and your entire family in jail when we're in office. They're going to do it anyways. They've already proved it. They're not going to go, wow, what a gracious guy. You pardoned us. We'll do you the same courtesy. Not happening. It is not going to happen. The only chance that there is that this stops is if there's a mutually assured destruction. And then from outside, Congress or some other body says, listen, we have to do something, pass some sort of legislation. But if Trump as the executive basically pardons people that his DOJ should, I'm not asking for them to investigate things that aren't crimes, but even the littlest crime, we'll get into this. We didn't talk about it beforehand, but like Letitia James, should she not face the same consequences that she employed to Trump? I mean, she basically did the exact same thing. She filled out false paperwork on a mortgage application. So now that the precedent's been set, I say go for it. I don't think that any of it will change until, especially, not necessarily the politicians, but especially the people that were involved in law enforcement or in the legal field prosecuting. They went after Trump's attorneys. They tried to get them disbarred. All of those tools and more need to be directed at them, or I don't think that it'll ever change.
See, I think that the real danger of the escalating prosecution game, and maybe we need some medicine for people to learn what's happening, is that there's so much law because we only write new laws. We never get rid of the old laws, right? So the odds are pretty good that both of us committed 3 federal crimes today. I don't know what they are, right? But probably we did. And when you have just like this glut of laws, you give unlimited discretion to prosecutors because they can always find something if they really want, if they're truly motivated to. And that's a very dangerous place to be because it does make the law look like a game, like it's not really a thing to be taken seriously. And quite frankly, if we get into this tit for tat arms race, eventually people are just going to start pulling the power move. Like the president just pardons himself and everyone in his administration on the last day of his in office.
That's what Biden did.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, but I mean, like, that might just have to be what happens going forward, because we're like, okay, well, it's been fun, gang. I'm out. We're all pardoned now. And like, it's a bad look. I think it cheapens the system. I mean, I take your point as saying the only way out is through, which I'm not sure I agree with, but I think either way, we've got to look for a way out, because I don't know where it ends otherwise.
I agree, but like, what I want to see is an equal application of the law, and I would like to see that we go back to a time where it's difficult to say this, right? Because I understand the people listening are like, well, equal application of the law means that if I jaywalk, that's the same as the president jaywalking. And if I can be charged, he should be, right? And I get it, but it's obviously not like that. When you break the glass on, like, we're going to allow one administration to prosecute the previous administration, that's very dangerous. I remember being younger when, the thing I learned about Gerald Ford was, well, he pardoned Nixon. Right. And that was how magnanimous that was. And I was like, as a young person, I was like, well, that sucks. If Nixon committed crime, screw him. Why does he deserve to get away with it? I wouldn't get a pardon if I did that stuff. Why should Nixon? But as you get older, you understand it. You're like, oh, because the political ramifications, if we give this executive the power to go after all of their political opponents in the same way that theoretically you go after a regular person. The problem is the incentive will be much higher to go after the political opponents. But my answer to all of that is, but it's already the status quo. There is zero chance, and I could prove it. There is zero chance that the Democrats are going to pull back the reins if all of a sudden Trump doesn't go after them. You want to know how I know that? Because look at every Tom, Dick, and Harry attorney or judge right now that's filing restraining orders about everything that they can about Trump's administration. Those same lawyers will be gung-ho if they have a favorable DOJ, or rather, lawyers like them will be gung-ho to go after Trump or anyone that they see as a threat to the establishment power structure. They're going to go after them no matter what. They're not going to stop because it's like, wow, that was really magnanimous of Trump to say, you know what, we're going to stop all these prosecutions. So I say, make the American people understand how corrupt this is and the standard that's been set. And the only way that that is possible is to treat them in the exact same manner by the exact same standard that they treated us. I think, in fact, I'll go a step further. Based on the logic of many attorneys that I've talked to on the left, or people like Destiny, their definition of insurrection was broad enough that technically what those Democrats did in that ICE facility was an insurrection. The Democrats said that means if you're an elected official and you engage in an insurrection, you can't be on the ballot. She should be removed from office. All of the people that support her have engaged in an insurrection. They should be removed from office. Make them choke on the very standard that they set forth.
A few points, because you covered some ground in order.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'll do the best I can. You did a slight conflation there, and I think it's actually a really great example. When somebody goes to court and says, "Judge, stop the Trump administration from doing X," they're suing the official capacity. They're suing the Secretary of State. They're suing the Trump administration. They're suing a public official, and they're saying, Judge, this public official shouldn't do this. Please stop them. That's always been within the rules. That's within fair play. What's not within fair play is going after the man and saying, no, you go to jail. You have to forfeit your assets. You lose your business. And that was the thing about the Nixon pardon that was so forward looking, which is that, like, did Nixon do wrong? Absolutely. But if you prosecute him, you unleash this hellstorm of democracy destroying legal scrum. And quite frankly, I mean, if you're a Democratic operative, you've got to think, if Joe Biden had just pardoned Trump, they had a much better chance in that election, right? Like, I mean, this was disastrous for them electorally. It's disastrous for the country.
Don't you think they knew that? If they'd have pardoned, it would have helped?
No, I think they have a nasty case of hubris with Trump. And this is the reason I say that, and this has been a very tough conclusion for me, because I told you I voted Democrat most of my life. So that, in some sense, that's my team, though not these days. And this is what Destiny asked me a related question. I said the same thing. I think that there are people who have imbibed a whole new moral philosophy. Like, this, like diversity is a good. You don't question it. It's good. It's a moral good. There's no justification needed. It just is good, right? In and of itself, it's good. And I think in that world, Trump is bad and uniquely bad. And he's so uniquely bad that it justifies you doing any norm ruining, disastrous thing to get him because he's so uniquely bad. And what troubles me about it is that it doesn't strike me as a way to get a reasoned disagreement. It's almost a religious position. Like they're just telling you what their gospel is. So, and that's tough because I do think that they're just true believers. Like they think, okay, this is a unique threat to democracy, and we are justified in destroying the foundations of democracy to address this unique threat, which is a bummer. That's no way to govern.
But that's my point. I totally agree with everything you're saying there. How does Trump pardoning a bunch of Democrats change that mindset? In my opinion, it's like this. There was this guy, he was like a sports reporter, low-level sports reporter, and during Black Lives Matter, I remember him saying like, oh, how dare people criticize this? This is a needed moment, blah, 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 blah. And then his next post, like hours later, were like, they're at my gated community. Someone tell them to stop. He would not change his mind until the consequences of what he wished upon others was delivered until himself. The same people that said that Trump and all of the attorneys that work for Trump and the supporters of Trump and the people in Trump's administration are fair game. We're going to throw Peter Navarro in jail. We're going to throw Steve Bannon in jail. They're not going to change their mind until they suffer the same consequences for the reasons you've stated. And it won't stop with Trump. Next, it'll be J.D. Vance. You already see them laying the groundwork. Vance is actually worse than Trump because he's competent, but he's just as evil. And so these same people with this religion will say, yes, let us proceed with this lawfare and every tactic that we can. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work. Like, it may be quite simply that we're doomed, that there will be no de-escalation. I'm tired of my side having to de-escalate. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's always being, you get censored on social media, but how dare you suggest that your opponents that wanted you censored face the same consequences they wished upon you? Nope, it's over. Trump's team should buy the book, not make stuff up, not do things illegally, but should buy the book, prosecute every even small crime against every Democrat, every FBI official, every lawyer, whatever. They should use every tactic. And I don't know, given what you just said, why you would think by him pardoning that would all of a sudden end this religion of the people that shattered those norms going after Trump.
No, you can never end a religion, right? But what you can do, and here's my counter pitch. The fringe is the fringe, and they're true believers, and they're going to keep true believing, right? But part of the reason Trump won the last election is that people like me, who historic Democratic voter, right? But also was like, whoa, this party appears to be insane. Like, they seem to have gone insane. I'm not going to vote for that. So I didn't vote for either of them in the last cycle, right? But that 20 million vote gap, 20 million people who voted for Biden but didn't vote for Harris, that's a big deal. That's the election, right? And I think in the next general, the parties are going to have to make a pitch. Which party is the adults in the room? And in some sense, what Trump's tactic seems to be, if I keep riling up the Democrats, they're going to keep frothing at the mouth and they're not going to look like the adults in the room, that's his superpower. I get it. He does well with that. But at a certain point, the right's going to have to pivot center for the general and say, no, we actually are the serious people who are going to be able to play this forward, which is something Vance is uniquely good at. He's incredibly good at that politically. So I think this is a long-term play. Now, query, how much is Trump interested in king-making versus his own personal agenda and trying to get a little pound of flesh on some people? I'm not sure. But I think there's a reasonable case to be made that long-term strategy, this sets you up as the party of reason in 28.
Let's say hypothetically Trump does what you suggest and issues all these pardons, and Democrats still win, and then Democrats use lawfare to go after Vance or DeSantis or Trump's family, etc. How long should we keep pardoning them and allowing them to prosecute us? Should we also allow them to once more pressure social media to censor people like me? And then when we get power, say, well, we're going to let that go. We're not going to investigate or actually punish the people. So what is your prescription for how long we should allow the lawfare to be one-sided before we say, well, clearly the American people are willing to accept the lawfare that comes from one side? In fact, I think you're likely to see, even if Trump doesn't prosecute, the nature of politics will be usually the team that doesn't have the executive wins the midterms. And so even if Trump would do what you say, I think that probably Democrats stand a good chance to win the midterms. And so the lesson will be learned. Democrats will say, it's great. It's okay. We could keep doing the lawfare. We're assured because people like Ryan will encourage Trump's team to moderate and become centrist that we could attack with impunity 100% of the time. In fact, I would argue that this mindset is exactly what got us where we're at right now when it comes to academia. It's so brutally, extremely left wing because my side says, now, we're not going to engage in cancel culture. We're going to say that the best ideas may win. And the other side says, no, screw you. We're coming at you with knives out 24/7. It's our religion. Fuck you. We will bury you. And then our side goes, now, cooler heads will prevail. So I reject your premise because I've seen this argument a million times over my entire life, that they come at people that are anti-establishment with knives out in the maximum way. USAID's funneling money to go after populists in other countries, to go after people in this country that have sort of an anti-establishment message. I'm tired of it. And I think the American people will say, as long as these prosecutions that, the DOJ, if they go after, which I don't think they will, but if they go after a Democrat, as long as they're by the book, I don't think the American people won't have the stomach for it. I'll think they'll say, hey, that's just the way things operate. Now let's judge Trump's administration based on the policies that he's issued.
So I think there's a few things because you ran again.
I know I ramble. It's my nature.
I don't think Trump has been following. I think he's been following your advice, not mine, to date. Let's put it that way. Like if you look at what he's done to law firms and what he's doing to universities,
not enough. It's not enough. It's just the little. It's not enough at all.
Let's put a pin on that and come back to it. He certainly has not been hands off. Let's put it that way. And then I think, in terms of the ICE facility, and I know that's the story that you were covering, I actually think the charging decisions in that were chef's kiss. Perfect. Because just for people, I know, Rob, you covered a lot, so just to give the general backdrop, some Democratic lawmakers and the mayor of Newark were protesting at an ICE facility. The protest got quite rowdy, let's say, and they entered areas where they probably shouldn't have been. And there was, at least for one congressperson, a physical altercation with an ICE officer. It is, Congress people have a statutory right to be in an ICE facility. They have a right to inspect. So you can't charge them with trespass, really. It's not what you can do. But the mayor of Newark did not. So you could charge him with trespass, but it's tic-tac. It's Bush League, right? Now, a congresswoman body slamming an ICE officer, that's not tic-tac. And when the Trump administration did the charges, they kind of, I thought, threaded that needle perfectly. They said, okay, we have a tic-tac trespassing thing. It seems like you're being reasonable. We're not going to charge the mayor of Newark and have him collect trash for 10 hours. This is a silly thing to do. Let's let bygones be bygones. At the same time, you cannot physically assault a federal officer in the course of their duty. We're going to have to charge you. That's a different thing, especially because she's been unrepentant. It probably would be different if she was willing to take a deal or say that she did something wrong, but she hasn't been. So I think that's a great example of using discretion in a way that shows that you are charging crimes that are clear and serious, but not stretching the bounds of interpretation or going after little stuff just because you can. Right? It's a credibility enhancing charging decision. Is how I read that.
I disagree. I think it destroys their credibility and encourages the lawfare against them. I think the mayor of Newark, because no one is above the law. That's why. That's the lesson we learned with so many January 6 people, right? With January 6, how many people were charged with the exact same crime that this Democrat rep, McIver, is that her name?
Oh, God, I can't pronounce it. I'm not sure.
But you know who I'm talking about. There were plenty of people on January 6 that were charged with the exact same crime, right?
I don't think so. It was a different crime. They were charged under obstructing a federal proceeding, which is 1505.
I thought there were some charged with the assault of law enforcement that didn't really go out of their way.
The problem with January 6ers is you're talking about like a category that includes like several thousand people. So it's possible that some, like by and large, the most, like the worst charges was seditious conspiracy. That was like the Proud Boys.
Sure.
Then it was like the really tic-tac stuff was 1505, which is obstructing a federal proceeding. But the Supreme Court struck that because, in fairness, that was bullshit.
And then what did prosecutors do?
Yeah,
they just tried to up charges and other things to get back at those people that they couldn't. Right? That's what they did in many cases.
Yeah. But the 1505 got struck. Right. So like that's not available anymore. And what they did with charging that one congresswoman, they didn't charge 1505, which is just like generally obstructing a federal proceeding. And sorry, I'm talking like legalese code. I'm realizing I should back up a little bit. The reason that was a bullshit thing to charge January 6ers for, and everyone kind of winced a little bit when it happened, is that 1505 was created after the financial crisis in the Dodd-Frank Act. It was part of the reforms to prevent white-collar crime on Wall Street. That's what it was for. So when they say, like, obstruct an official proceeding, they meant forge a document so we can't find your white-collar crime. They didn't mean, like, some general anything that you ever do to obstruct any federal proceeding on any level. And the Supreme Court ruled accordingly. But here, I think it's 1111. It's the statute that says that you cannot actually obstruct a federal officer in the course of their duty, which is the one that I believe they charged her with. Let me look it up real quick to make sure I'm saying it.
No, I think you're right, but I'm saying that there were January 6ers that were charged with that as well, some of which didn't even engage in acts of violence against law enforcement, but they were charged with that. Nonetheless, you're not saying she shouldn't have been charged with that. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is the standard has been set that any little charge that could be employed against people that support Trump, pro-life people, people like Roger Stone, that the FBI tipped off CNN to be there so that they could raid him and pull him out in his underwear in front of all the cameras at 5 a.m. That's the standard that's been set forth. And that is the same standard that should be employed against the Democrats. And I don't think there's a lot of people that were like, you know what, the reason I'm not voting for Kamala Harris is because Roger Stone got pulled out in his underwear. I think most people have no clue what that was about. And I think that if a Trump DOJ could successfully prove that some case like this Newark mayor trespassed, then he should be charged with that. And they could make the claim, Democrats made the clear case, no one is above the law. This man clearly trespassed. It's black letter law, easy to prove. We're going to charge him. The idea that we don't charge political officials was thrown out the window when Obama's DOJ decided that they were going to knowingly take a story from Hillary Clinton and use it to illegally spy on Trump's team. And when they proceeded to do lawfare in about 5 or 6 legal cases that they went after Trump, almost every single one of them that Democrats had done the same thing, such as mishandling classified documents, alleged, destruction of evidence, etc. They did all that. The standard's been set. Those with power wield it. No one is above the law, so we'll go after our opponents. And I think the American people will accept that.
No, the problem with it is, and the documents case is a great example, right? Because here's the issue. Did Trump mishandle classified documents? Obviously, right? Did Biden mishandle classified documents? Obviously. If you lined up every member of Congress, how many of them have mishandled classified documents? I'm going to guess 95%.
Sure.
And the reason is you end up like, as a lawyer, this happens to me all the time. I've got binders of documents that are highly confidential. They're stacked up. I'm reading them. And then I got to shred them, but I'm on the next case. And what the fuck am I going to do? And it's not a hard mistake to make, right? And so it's like, okay, yeah, like, is there a technical violation? Yes. But are they in the world where Biden and Trump both get charged? Are we even saying that no one's above the law? No. We're just saying that if you're prominent enough, you get charged because everyone else had the same problem with confidential documents. The issue is it's a ridiculous thing to charge a political opponent with because even though it is technically the law, we all know that it's a ticky-tack nonsense charge. And there's a difference there. Like, I think people, at least in my circles, when they looked at the charges against Trump, the New York case was viewed as creative lawyering. It was a novel thing. It didn't really seem that related to the election. It seemed like a stretch. The documents case seemed ticky-tack. The ones people cared about were the election interference cases, the federal one and the Georgia one, because those ones seemed at least related to what they were talking about. And I think that when you bring the ticky-tack ones, that's when you start losing credibility. Like if Georgia wants to bring a case against Trump, and they did a terrible job, but so whatever, they kind of lost it on their own. But if Georgia wants to bring a case against Trump about that call to the Secretary of State, that's a serious allegation that a state has the right to do. That's very different than saying, okay, yeah, like you misuse confidential documents just like everyone else. It feels very different.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's something that I said from the get-go. I thought that those charges, at least, I didn't agree with them. But the severity of the accusation, I think, was something that you could understand why someone would want to look at. I made the same argument as you when it comes to mishandling classified documents. I think that that's the vast majority of people in Washington. I'll go further. The sort of campaign violation, finance violation that Bragg was ultimately sort of charging, falsifying documents. I think campaign finance, I ran for Congress, right? It's insane how like difficult those laws are. My guess is probably 90% of campaigns run afoul of campaign finance reporting laws or something of that. So the fact that they took this same case that Hillary Clinton was basically ordered to pay a fine because she was found to have violated campaign finance laws as well in that same election, but they had this novel legal theory that we're going to charge Trump for 34 felonies, and it was one of the reasons that they ran on was all of these felonies he was found guilty of. I think that it shows you're right that this was ticky-tack. My argument is if they started it, why wouldn't we employ it against them? I'll ask you, right? Who did you vote for, if you don't mind saying, in the previous election for president?
Oh, I mean, I voted Democrat my whole life prior to 2024.
But in 2024, did you vote for Trump?
No, I did. My position in 2024, I've been Pisco and I have like a running series on this because he just can't believe that when this comes out of my mouth. I thought Trump was better of the two options, but I thought his position on the 2020 election was disqualified.
So then why would I, with all due respect, and I do respect you, Ryan, but why do I care what you think? You're a reasonable person that saw the unreasonable lawfare against Trump, and you still didn't vote for Trump. So your argument is, well, now Trump shouldn't employ the same tactics against them because it would discourage me from thinking he's reasonable and voting for him? But you didn't vote for him. So why should we as Trump supporters care what people like you are like? Well, what we would like to see is more reasonableness. You didn't vote for him when you saw the Democrats being unreasonable.
Though I would say that the 20 million Democrats who didn't vote for Harris that voted for Biden in the previous cycle is what won Trump the election. Like
was it 20? Was that number accurate? Was it 20 million?
I thought what was the enthusiasm gap?
Well, there was. I know what happened was that was the initial number, but I think because
it might have closed over time,
right? Because the mail-in ballots, that come. So let's see. How many? Let's see if I could look it up. But please keep talking. I'll look it up. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. But I think the point is that in the general election, you can't run only on your base. You have to run towards the center a bit. Everyone does, right? Everyone knows you run to your base in the primary, you run to the center in the general. And Harris lost because she couldn't convince people like me that she was a real centrist. And Trump won because he actually was, and in my mind is, more center than the Democrats are on a lot of issues, especially like the common sense ones. So yeah, I do think that like keeping the kind of, I'll call it the adults in the room vote available to you is important politically. I think that that's going to be a big deal going forward. And I think the definition of left and right is changing, man. And there's a reshaping happening, and I think the Republicans actually could peel off a huge percentage of the kind of growing independents in the next generation.
So it's hardly matters. You're directionally correct. It was about 12 million more votes, 11.9, and then Trump received 3 million more votes. So directionally, you're right. But I just wondered that because I remember when that number came out, everyone was like 20 million less votes. And then it was like, well, wait a minute, California's still counting, weeks later. But now I think that from my perspective, I hear people like you all the time that say, if Republicans would just do this, I would vote for them. And I don't think you'll ever vote for them. I think that I really don't care what people that are centrist that say, please, 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 we should not punish the people that use lawfare against you and the people you support. Let's leave cooler heads prevail. And then they'll lose. Republicans will lose. In fact, I think maybe a lot of people in Trump's base, like myself, will be unwilling to vote for people like Trump in the future if they don't employ the very tactics that were employed against them and us. That's what I think. And so I just ultimately think that it'll always be for the centrist. One more step. If you had just did this one more thing, and you'll always be willing to forgive those Democrats. You'll go back to them, would be my guess. I think in the 2028 election, if Trump does to them what they did to him, you'd say, well, that was too far. Now I'll vote for Democrats. So I just think that it's coming from a place of you would like to see populism change and MAGA change to more closely fit you. But the reality is you were never the voter that they were trying to get anyways, because you could watch the blatant lawfare against Trump and still give the thumbs up and say, nah, that's still acceptable enough that I won't vote for Trump. So I think that Trump would be, now we'll see how it would play out, but I think Trump would be behooved to protect himself, to go after his opponents, to get his pound of flesh in hopes of the mutual sword destruction stopping, as opposed to being milquetoast and allowing his enemies to proceed to do this against him and his allies in the future.
I think it would be a huge mistake. And the reason I think it would be a huge mistake is if you, like, I can only speak to myself as an example, but if you look at, like, my positions and the ones I've staked out publicly, no, I did not vote for Trump because I thought that the issues not with the January 6th riot, but with the actual false slate of electors, that actually was disqualifying for me. But the reason it's disqualifying for me is I take this Constitution, individual rights very seriously. I'm an originalist. I wanted to vote for Trump because I wanted to keep the court originalist. I'm a small government federalist. I want the federal government to be smaller. I think that the DEI extravaganza went so far that the Democrats, and this is what I'm debating with Pisco next time I go on his show, the Democrats were on the verge of instantiating actual racism into the law. Like, that was their party position, was that they were trying to make certain forms of discrimination legal. So the gap between where the Democrats were and where I was profound. It was really rough. And if it had been DeSantis or Haley or Pence, I would have voted Republican. If it had been Vance, I would have voted Republican. I had a issue.
Why? Vance accepted the alternate slate of electors.
He didn't do it.
Yeah, but he accepted it. You'll be okay with that?
I think that Vance's level of culpability is very different than Trump's level of culpability.
Yeah, but if the idea is that we want and return to originalist constitutionalism, we think what Trump did was so far afoul of that, wouldn't that mean that a president that you have the choice of voting for that says, actually, I think that was great and I would do the same thing if the same situation occurred, that wouldn't be disqualifying?
No, man. I think that what Vance is doing is, he's got a boss and he's talking to his boss and he's pleasing his boss. And I think we all know what that is. Vance is many things. He's very slick and he's an extraordinary communicator, and he's going to be a juggernaut in 2028. But yeah, I don't think that's the same thing. The truth is, and I wish this wasn't so, because I would have been. I thought the Democrats deserved to lose, so I was tempted to vote against them. I do think Trump has a uniquely lawless streak, not meaning that he goes out of his way to violate the law, meaning that, like, I don't think he really cares about it that much. Which is, for better or worse, I just don't think I think he's the kind of guy, and as a lawyer, I'm not going to name names, we have these clients where, your client says, they say, man, I really want to buy this company. And you're like, I think that would be illegal. And they go, tell me how I'm going to buy this company.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
I think that's who Trump is, right? Like, I don't think he thinks the law has a moral component. I think that he views it as a game of enforcement, and he's been very good at winning that game. So, I think that's who he is. That's not that was disqualifying for me, but I don't throw shade at people who voted for him, because, like I said, I was very tempted because the Democrats had, in my opinion, they had lost their mind. And this might segue into the her stuff and the Biden stuff. The cover up on Biden's health was just, Jon Stewart, I thought, had a really funny bit about it, where he was like, it's the worst cover up of all time. Because, like, yes, it was covered up, but also everyone knew. Like, it was so clear when people were saying, yeah, Biden's fit as a fiddle. Gavin Newsom said he does 3-hour Photoshop every day. Does 9 hours of events. And you're like, no. Come on, man. Like, no, he doesn't. We've all seen the guy.
So this is the last question. Oh, it's a two-parter, right? I think that Trump basically did what you're suggesting in this first term. He didn't go after Hillary Clinton, right? Even though he knew she was responsible for working with the FBI to start. He didn't. Did that prevent Democrats from using lawfare against him?
No. And that is, I think, and we'll have to go on Wick's channel to find the VODs. I really opposed the prosecution of Trump for exactly this reason. This is a genie that's very tough to get back in the bottle. It's literally a mob vendetta cycle, right? Where it's like, once you engage in vendetta, how does it ever really end? And you don't know. It's very hard to fix it. I do hope, and maybe this is something we can agree on, I do hope that maybe after a cycle or two of this, people are going to wake up to the overwhelming reality that the federal government and the presidency in particular are too powerful. And we need to dramatically ratchet down the size, the scale, the scope of the federal government and restore power to the states so that we can avoid having this kind of civil war fought vicariously in courts, because it's no way to govern. And I don't see another way to de-escalate. You just have to ratchet it way the F down.
I agree that the federal, though maybe we'd have a slight disagreement. I don't think that it's the president that's too powerful. I think it's the executive, in particular, the unelected bureaucrats. I think that they're really the ones that are powerful. And I think that giving power back to the states. But the last thing I'll say on this, and then I'll give you the final word, and we can jump into her or the 7-2 decision on the end, whatever you want to go to. Trump's not going to be in the ballot in 2028, presumably. And so therefore, how about he just goes ahead and goes after all of his enemies, and then you'll forgive J.D. Vance by saying he was just supporting his boss, and you'll vote for him anyways?
It depends who the Democrats run.
Well, we'll see, right? That's fair, but that's fair no matter what Trump does. Why would you blame any potential Republican in 2028, or for that matter, the Republicans in the midterms, if Trump orders his DOJ to politically prosecute his opponents, when you've already forgiven Vance for saying that the thing you think was unforgivable for Trump, he supported? So in other words, whatever Trump does in sending the DOJ to go after his opponents, that should have, based on your logic, zero effect on whether or not you'll vote for Republicans in 2026 or 2028, right?
No, of course it's going to have an effect. And you look at the candidates in the totality. One of the things I look at is, do I think that they are going to support the rule of law and that they're going to restore kind of civility and decency to the way that we deploy the powers of the federal government against citizens, which is a huge fucking deal. Unfortunately, the Republicans don't have the best track record on that right now. If they could get the better track record on it, that would be fantastic. Now, it might be the case that you end up where everyone's dirty, and then that might be a wash, right? Like, that could also be the case. But yeah, it depends who they're running. Like, if you're running like a Gavin Newsom, I wouldn't vote for him for dog catcher. So,
it's actually a good question. It might be out of your wheelhouse, but to get us transitioned, like, who do you think could run as a Democrat at this point that has any sort of credibility right now on the national stage that doesn't have the stink of sort of the Biden administration on them? Because you look at Buttigieg, I mean, he was in the administration, right? You look at Kamala, I mean, we know the problems with her. Gavin Newsom has his own problems. I think someone like maybe a Josh Shapiro here, the governor of Pennsylvania, I think that maybe he could distance himself. Like, do you think that that would be possible to kind of, because they need, like, am I wrong at this point? Is any problems there are with Trump, the polling shows that Democrats' popularity is tanking as well, if not worse. So it seems like they need a fresh face of some sort, right?
If they could nominate Josh Shapiro, it would show either that the Democratic machine has learned a lesson, which it seemed impossible up till now, or that there's actually been a shift. The thing is, though, and I'm not a David Hogg fan, by the way, but when you looked at David Hogg getting kicked out of the DNC because he wanted to primary establishment Democrats. Now, I don't actually want him to succeed on any of his political projects, so that's, he's a weird example for me. But what you saw is that the Democratic machine is just very tightly controlling in a way that the Republican machine, I don't think ever was. But even if it was, Trump smashed it to pieces when he won in 2016. So that it's been in shambles anyway, and I don't think it ever was that powerful. the Democrats need to show that they are not that party anymore. Josh Shapiro would be a great choice. Maybe there's somebody else out there lurking, some young talent.
Bashir is another person people talked about.
It's tough if you put up somebody where they can play clips, like you see when Newsom had Charlie Kirk on his podcast, and Newsom tried to go like, "Oh, I never said Latinx. That's crazy." And then CNN was like, "Come on, man. Here's the clip for you saying it." Because in 2020, 2022, the Democrats just drank deeply from a well of very bad ideas. And the people who are poisoned with that, you can't run. They're not viable nationally anymore. Like, nobody's going to vote for those people. So
I think the problem they have, though, is if you look at like the young talent base, like your David Hoggs or like your people in the squads, your AOCs, the problem is they're sort of have other problems that I think the people will find unpalatable, such as sort of more radical progressivism. And I think that the Democrats are at this interesting crossroads where sort of they need fresh faces, but the fresh faces that are upcoming are sort of antithetical to a lot of what the establishment level Democrats believe in. And so there's going to be this, I think there's going to be this civil war where if I'm a Democrat, I'm hoping that someone like, I'm no Josh Shapiro fan, mind you, but I think he's far more sensible and palatable to sort of a centrist mindset than like an AOC or than like a Kamala Harris, if you go in the opposite direction of that. So I think it's interesting. It'll be neat to see. I know maybe that's not your forte, offering prescriptions for the Democratic Party. Neither is it mine. But that's just the way I'm looking at it. If I'm in purely a trying to win mindset, it's like, what are they going to offer? Because I agree with you. I think a lot of there's going to be a bad taste in people's mouth from the Biden cover-up. And I think, unfortunately for the Democrats, the Biden policies weren't as popular as they would have people believe. I think that people thought the country was going in a bad direction under Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think that there's a thing that happened under Biden where it almost started to feel like they were doing things just to do the opposite of what Trump did. Because if you think about like the reversal on the border, that doesn't even really make sense as a policy. Like we're just gonna not enforce the border. Like, maybe you're just trying to be the opposite of Trump, or the in the affirmative action case at Harvard, right? In the First Circuit, the Trump DOJ showed up and said, these are de facto race quotas. Harvard is discriminating against Asian people. This is unfair. Then it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Biden DOJ shows up and says, no, this isn't a de facto race quota. Everything's fine. Don't look. So, it literally they're just taking the opposite perspective on the same facts. Like, nothing, for those of you who aren't lawyers, the facts don't change in a case. Your district court, you find the facts. When they appeal to the circuit and then to the Supreme Court, they're just looking at the transcripts. There's no new witnesses. So that means that the Trump administration looked at the record and said, this is a de facto race quota. And the Biden administration looked at the same record and said, no, it's fine. In fact, we should be able to keep doing it. We encourage Harvard to keep doing it. That's wild. And I think, part of it could be this kind of religious approach I described earlier. But I think part of it is just like, we're going to do the opposite of whatever he did. And that's an idiotic way to govern. Like, even if you dislike your political opponent, it's possible they have some good ideas, right? Like, you can't just be the opposite of everything they do.
Yeah, I totally agree. On that note, like we're talking about Harvard and things of that nature, we see that the Trump administration came out and they're recommending a hold on student visas to Harvard. Now it seems like very quickly after that was announced, we have a judge that announced basically a temporary injunction. My reading of this, and we'll see, before we talk about the merits of whether or not what Trump's doing you think is legal or illegal, the idea that this was such a fast injunction, and I forget the specific term for it, but my understanding is the Trump administration weren't even present when the judge issued, what do they call that, ex parte, weren't even present at the time. It seems that that's a bit hasty, seeing as how this wouldn't take into effect until the next semester. So did you think that this was an example of like a judge sort of jumping the gun, saying, I have to issue this without the Trump administration here to give their side of it? Or do you think that this was a situation where it's like, well, this is needed just to, to make sure there's a halt in it?
It's not super uncommon. It's called a temporary restraining order normally, to issue a TRO ex parte, typically because exactly what you just said. There's some kind of ticking clock or some kind of thing that might happen. And it looks like Harvard saw this coming because they filed, I forgot the exact number. It was like a 70-something page brief.
Right.
On less than 12 hours notice. So, like, I think they had been negotiating or talking. They saw the writing on the wall. Their lawyers have been working on this. So I'm sure they came in and gave the judge a package of unbelievably well put together legal documents explaining the whole problem. The other thing is, in this case, the injunctive relief really doesn't matter that much. Like, okay, like you can't put this policy into place instantly. That doesn't matter because what really matters in this case, and this is, I hate that I'm defending Harvard here because I've got so many bones to pick with Harvard. Like there's so many things they do that drive me fucking crazy. But as is typical with the Trump administration, he's aiming in a direction that I appreciate, but then he's using tactics that I can't countenance. So does Harvard need to be reined in? Should they be chided? Do they deserve some kind of reprimand? Oh my God, yes. Can you demand 5 years of security footage of protests? No. That, like, you obviously can't, like, when Big Brother comes to a university and says, give us your surveillance tapes of your students, you have obvious First Amendment problems. And you should have First Amendment problems. Like, we don't want Big Brother getting surveillance tapes. That's the kind of thing that anybody who fears big government should find to be anathema. So what Trump did technically means that I have to take Harvard's side on this, but in terms of directionally, to use the phrase you used earlier, they do deserve a comeuppance. So anyway, hopefully they sort this out in court and Harvard can be chided in a way that doesn't blow a hole in the First Amendment.
Well, I would be for a limit. I mean, I guess I'm probably more extreme than probably you and most people would be. I would tax all of their endowments. I would stop sending any federal money whatsoever to any institution. Let them all be like Hillsdale. I think that they're indoctrination chambers to make people that are anathema to my way of life, and I should not have to fund that with my tax dollars, is the way I see it. But I agree with you. I think that even if that's the conclusion I want, you can't selectively apply things just because we dislike the actors in a way that universally singles them out in a way that I think is unacceptable. Having said that, the remedy in this particular case, the idea of not allowing student visas at places like Harvard, I'm not so sure that this will be illegal. I think that the Supreme Court may in fact say that this is okay because I don't know how they could interfere on sort of the executive's authority to decide whether or not to allow guests of this country. And so it may be that even though you could say, well, they're being singled out in other ways, like demanding their footage, et cetera, and because they didn't comply, now the Trump administration is going harder. What are your feelings? Do you think that the Harvard has a case here that no, Trump can't do this? Or do you think that the court's likely to say, well, this comes in the purview of the executive and they're allowed to revoke visas basically for any reason that they want or prevent people from coming on visas?
Well, there's going to be a number of levels to this challenge, right? So there's going to be like the super high level stuff, which is the constitutional stuff. Like, is the federal government acting because of an impermissible violation on free speech, right? So if, for example, they say, well, we don't like that you let your students protest in the following ways, that's dicey, right? On a First Amendment basis. Then the next level of the challenge is going to say like, well, there's actually laws in place, right? What do the laws say? Like, what is your reason for doing this? Is it like with Mr. Mahmoud Khalil, where you say that the Rubio, as the Secretary of State, has said this is a foreign policy problem, or is there some other basis? Like, what are you interpreting the law correctly to allow you to do this? And if the court, typically the way they do it is they look for a legal problem first because it lets them avoid having to decide a tricky constitutional question, and then if they can't, then they do the constitutional question. So there are valid challenges there. I don't think we know enough, or at least I don't know enough just yet about the nitty gritty of how it's going to play out to predict it. It doesn't seem like and this has been my criticism of this administration endlessly. They're always a sledgehammer and very rarely a scalpel. And that's very good politically. Like you get these big headlines, but like you see the same thing with Doge, where it's just like, oh, well, if you were a little bit more careful, could you avoid stepping on this rake? And then maybe you actually could do your job. But no, you had to go broad, and now we're tied up in court. So I think that they are going to have some problems because of the nature of the action they've taken. Maybe they can back down and find a more like structured settlement, or they can find a narrower path to enforce. But my gut read is that they're going to have a little bit of a problem just because of how broad the actions they took were.
Yeah, and I know people on my side of the aisle don't want to hear this. I sort of agree with you. I think that that's likely to be the outcome. I was not surprised by the 7-2 decision on the Alien Enemy Act thing either, because it's been my contention from the get-go that what I assumed would happen would be that they would say ultimately the president probably has the right to invoke powers like this, but there's still some level of due process for the people that are accused of this. And I ultimately think that's what the court was really saying in this 7-2 decision, right? Like the question is the nature of what does that due process look like and what exactly was afforded to these people. I think that's sort of what the 7-2 said, that it was kicking it back, right, in order to have lower courts answer that question, and then ultimately it'll kick back up to the Supreme Court. Is that how you saw that as well? That this wasn't as big of a win or loss for Trump or a win for the people against him as it was sort of made out. Oh my gosh, it's Trump got defeated here. It seemed more nuanced, that it was saying, look, we're just saying that they deserve some sort of due process. Now we have to hash out what that is.
I completely agree with you. Actually, I have a $100 bet with Pisco on if the court ever decides the Alien Enemies Act question squarely, that they're going to come out exactly like you said. They're going to say whether or not there's an invasion is an executive function that courts can't rule on. Whether or not it's actually on foreign soil and triggering all the X, Y, and Z in the statute, that's all executive. But the due process question is for the courts. So we'll rule on that, but the other stuff is non-justiciable executive functions. And I think that's right. And I think that's basically what the court was previewing. And quite frankly, and this is what I mean about being a scalpel or a sledgehammer. Like when Obama got the moniker of deporter in chief, and he hit deportation numbers that Trump still hasn't hit. The way he did it was he set up summary proceedings, meaning due process doesn't mean you need a trial. Due process means you just need to have as much process as is owed you under the circumstances. So if all we're doing is deporting you, it can be very minimal. It can be, okay, good to see you. This is the immigration judge. Are you here legally? No, sir. Off you go. Right? You're done. The problem is when you start ratcheting up the consequences. Like, for example, if you're not deporting people to their home country, you're deporting them to a fucking gulag. Well, now you might owe them more process because that consequence is very different than just sending them home. So I think there's room, if Trump can be a little bit more of a scalpel and say, oh, wait a minute, if I read this 7-2 decision, I can just set up some judges, some summary proceedings, some flights, boom, 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 out the door. But if I try to hit the home run swing, I'm going to be tied up in court again. And it's going to be a question of, okay, is that good enough because I'm sending them to this prison facility in Venezuela instead of sending them home, right? Or is it El Salvador? Sorry.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And it's one of the reasons that I actually favor the type of decision that we saw with the court, because despite me thinking that we should deport at this point every illegal, I do think that the consequence of one, getting deported to your country of origin, or if the country of origin won't accept you, then I'm open to hearing other suggestions. But that's a different prescription than we're deporting you as basically a terrorist, an enemy combatant. It's not quite either of those things, but it's close to that, to a place where we know that you will basically be jailed indefinitely. I was against even some of the treatment I saw of alleged terrorists at Gitmo. I think that they deserve some sort of military tribunal to just throw them up and lock up, throw away the key and say, no, screw them. They're evil people. I hesitate for that. I'm distrusting of my government. And the same is true in this case of the Trump administration. So I do. Now, I will say that I think part of this is a legal calculus and a political calculus. And I'll get you out of here thinking what you think about this. Politically, I think the way that they've done this is to basically make the Democrats go all in perceptually in the way it looks to the American people of they care more about illegals than us. Right. And that they're having martinis with, or, with these MS-13 gang members or I think the legal calculus is if you get the opponents to expel so much energy on the Alien Enemy Act, then that's energy they're not going to be expelling on summary deportations elsewhere. Whereas if you're like, fine, it's sort of a compromise. We won't use the AEA, but we are just summary deporting everyone that's here illegal. And so I think that maybe that's part of the calculus, that if we go over the line to start, then it appears more reasonable when we come back to the line. I'm not saying that's a good thing, mind you, but I am wondering if that's part of their calculation going into this.
Well, and I'll give you one more piece of the calculus. Part of the reason why the numbers of border crossings were so high is there was no actual deterrent effect.
Yeah.
So
you're right. Yep.
What Trump is doing, I would say, is too much deterrence, and you could find a solution that was more of a scalpel solution than what he's doing for sure. But now, if you're thinking about crossing into the country illegally, your calculus has to be there is some probability that I'm sent to a fucking gulag.
Yeah.
You're right. That actually is a big deal in your calculus, right? Like that changes your mind about whether this is a good idea. Now, just because it has a deterrent effect does not justify it. But
sure.
I think that is another part of the calculus, right? And I think we've seen what the border numbers look like. I think that it's working in that regard.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that is something I've mentioned before, but you're right. I didn't even think of it there. That's absolutely part of it. All right, we'll get you out on this. What are we looking for? I hope I'll get to talk to you within 2 weeks or within a month.
Oh, yeah. Love to come back.
What are you looking for in the coming weeks? Do you see any big legal challenges, anything Trump's doing, any predictions that you think in any cases that might be coming up? What do you think? What are you going to be looking at when it comes to sort of national politics, legally or otherwise?
I think the Harvard one, of course, we talked about a little bit. That bears watching. There's going to be hearings about the Hur report and Biden that are going to come up. We'll see if they lead to anything. I think it's going to be executive privilege and a lot of smoke, no fire, but we'll see. And then just today, there was a big break at a major law firm in the city where some partners left because they didn't like that they struck a deal with the Trump administration. So there might be a reconfiguring of the Democratic and Republican power bases in the legal profession in New York. And when that plays out, that's going to be very different. Because if you start collecting these major powerful lawyers at firms that are politically aligned, they're going to have some major clout and ability to interact with many of these cases going forward. So that's worth watching.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming. It's nice to have agreements and disagreements. And when it comes to legal matters, you're one of the people that I always trust. It's difficult as laymen, like me and the majority of my audience, a lot of times to sift through the ins and outs of this. You can get a gut feeling on things, but it's great to have someone who actually knows what's going on. So always appreciate you coming on. Do you want to shout out a channel, or where can people find you next? Do you got any debates lined up or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on X. I probably should have a channel or something to promote, but I foolishly don't. So Ryan C. Mullally on X. I've got 4 L's in my last name, which is a huge brand risk. I'm on Wick and Admiral Gibbs shows often, and I've got probably another debate with Pisco lined up on how upset he is with me that I don't disavow Trump. So I'll do the flip side and be talking about how
you're getting it from both ends, right?
That's the life of a centrist.
Yeah.
You just get endless shit from both sides. And if I can leave you with the wisdom of Admiral Gibbs, he said this shit that blew my mind on the last debate panel. Someone said, "You're lying. You'd never vote for a Democrat." And he said, "Of course I would. I have, but never nationally. I vote for them locally because I know these people. I see them on the ballot and I'm like, that's fucking Bob. Yeah, he's a Republican, but I drink with Bob. He's an asshole. He shouldn't have power. I know that guy. I'm not voting for him." And that's the difference between federal and local politics. Local politics is actually people you know in your community, and it matters. And if we're ever going to get out of this shit show where we're just mudslinging and bringing court cases against each other, it's because we restore power locally. where these things can be sorted out in a much more civil and sane way. And anyway, that's my pitch, and no one seems interested on either side, but that's the fight I'm fighting.
He is right locally though. Like I tell people all the time where I'm at, like the Democrats that run locally, they're like pro Second Amendment, right? They're like not really big into a lot of the culture war, like LGBT stuff. It's just like, well, we think we should have a little more taxation, like, and more programs for our local school. That's the difference between a Clarion County Republican and a Clarion County Democrat. It's like we agree on all the culture stuff. It's just slight disagreements on, and you do know those people. You know, you're right.
I mean, dude, I know we're over time, but we fought our Revolutionary War because being governed by an island that didn't give a shit about you doesn't make any sense. If you've ever been to DC, I can guarantee you that is just as much as an island, and the people give even less of a shit about you. The issue, the whole foundation of our country is that government should be as local as possible. And there are things that have to be national. We agree on that. But if you make everything national, you just end up in a food fight that no one can win. Because there's no way, you're never going to find a candidate who appeals to 330 million people and speaks to my issues. It's not possible. So push it down the line, bring it back. Anyway, we'll see.
I'd say before we build up, we need a demolition, man. So go ahead and use all the lawfare you can against.
Well, you got one, so there you go.
We're hoping. I don't think he's going near far enough, but thank you so much, Ryan. I'll keep in touch. We'll talk hopefully in a couple weeks then. And I really appreciate you making time to come on. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, brother. Have a good one.
All right, take it easy. All right. Ryan, always generous to come on. Spirited disagreements, but I think that he is amongst the best people I talk to, sort of when it comes to analyzing these political cases, it's giving the ins and outs of how things have to play out through the legal process. So always good to have him on. And I'm glad, I think we're working out where it's going to be a regular segment in the show, probably once every couple weeks or so. So we'll pick a day that works for both of us. But yeah, I can't say enough. I think Ryan's a great dude, and I'm really, really, really thankful that he's willing to come on a show like mine, even if he knows I'm going to give him guff for being a centrist. You know what I mean? Ultimately, I will say, just to finish the point that I was making there, I do think that, though, you see a lot of people that are centrist saying, oh, geez, if Trump would just do X, and then they didn't vote for him. Well, the Democrats were so bad, and then they either voted for Democrats or they didn't vote for Trump. I'm sort of tired of that. I don't think that there is this turn the other cheek mentality. Trump turned the other cheek in 2016 to 2020, and where did that leave him? Assassination attempts, lawfare, his lawyers being disbarred, being attacked, all of these norms being broke. And then it's the same old sub story every time. Okay, sorry that those norms were all broke. Sorry that we did all of this, or not we. Sorry that people did all this illegal crap against you and your supporters and your attorneys and all that. But whatever you do, don't retaliate. Don't do that. And trust us, it'll get better. It won't get better. It will not. None of this will change until the people that have engaged in this are held to the same standard that they sought to other people. Not going to happen. And I was with Ryan. I used to make these arguments like when it came to cancel culture. I'm still one that doesn't engage in cancel culture myself. But ultimately, my solution doesn't have utility. If one side says, we will do everything we can to bury you, to get you fired, to boycott your company, if you engage in cultural or political opinions we don't like, and the other side says, well, that's childish, we won't do that, let's leave cooler heads prevail, then the first side will win over the long haul. No matter what, they will win. That's why we see almost of all corporate America went to the left. They were doing things culturally that were on the left, that politically were on the left, because the consequences of running afoul of the left meant getting boycotted, getting canceled, etc. And the consequences of running afoul of the right was they'll say, hey, we don't like that. The same is true of the legal framework. So no, I'm not saying that, look, and you heard me criticizing with Ryan there. There are things that the Trump administration's done that I'm not the biggest fan of. But within a legal framework, absolutely. Leave no crime go unpunished that any Democrat, any FBI agent, any DOJ member, any part of the administration, any media member, any lawyers of any Democrats, any crime, no matter how small, you go at with the maximum effect, as hard as possible within a legal framework. That's what should happen. And until that happens, and the people that wanted to use that lawfare to go after Trump, to go after Republicans, to go after Trump supporters, to go after Trump's lawyers, until that occurs, nothing will change. Only once they face consequences may people say, whoa, 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 we need to make sure that we have a framework where this sort of stuff can't happen anymore. But as long as one side's allowed to get away with it with impunity and the other side isn't, we could see the legal ramifications of that everywhere. That's how I knew and was able to predict that eventually there would be a right-wing riot. And when that happened, the left would go nuts and they would bring the hammer down on them. That's exactly what happened on January 6th. How was I able to predict that? Because when you saw that basically with impunity, the left was allowed to riot over and over and over again, unfortunately, one consequence of that would be the other side will say, fine, we'll play that game too. That's because one side gets away with it, the other side is punished to the maximum effect. So until both sides are punished in an equal framework, nothing will change. So anyways, that's the disagreement I have with Ryan there. And, again, I think the fact that he could see how disgusting the lawfare was against Trump and he still ended up not being able to vote for Trump, I think it speaks for itself. So anyways, absolutely great guest. I love talking to Ryan. I hope you all consider going to his X channel and giving him a follow. I think he has fantastic insights. So please consider checking him out. I'll put that link one more time out there. Now, to get to the rest of the show. I would like to be done around midnight tonight. And the reason for that is because I have a guest here. A good friend of mine from my high school days is actually, as we speak, watching How It's Made with my wife downstairs, waiting for me to start screaming or something up here. Let me tell you about my day and why I have a super chat goal of $357. How much money are we trying to raise each day that I do a show? Man, I'm always so impressed with that graphic. Let's see that again. Don't get discouraged out there. Those of you that are around my age, 40 years old or older, I know that sometimes like technology could be frightening. And when you see wizardry like that someone like me is so technologically accomplished that I could create an excellent graphic with a sound effect like that, trust me, it's within your grasp too. With years and years of research and schooling and tutoring, you too may be able to make a graphic this amazing someday. Don't get dis. Amazing. Anyways, we're trying to raise $357 per show because that'll be enough to replace my money from my previous place of employment. And so that my family doesn't go hungry, I could buy new socks and eventually get a gazebo. That's the intent. But today the goal's a little different. The money that I will be raising today will not be going to said gazebo socks or even food on the table. It's going to be going to a new toilet. Let me tell you the saga of what happened to Rob's toilet today. Rob's toilet stories. Now, I know this is why everyone turns in. They really want to hear what I have to say about my adventures on the toilet. So, my son was in the bathroom and he made a mess using hand soap. So it was all over the place. So I didn't have paper towels because we ran out of paper towels and my wife told me to put paper towels from the kitchen into the bathroom, but I didn't. So I tried to use toilet paper. I was like, toilet paper. And I don't know how much you know about toilet paper, but it doesn't clean things very well. They're like on a hard surface, like a lot of hand soap, like half a bottle of hand soap. So I did my best, but it was still very soapy. So I decided that I saw a container of baby wipes. So I grabbed said container of baby wipes and I took not one, not two, but 3 baby wipes to clean up around the sink. Now, it was a very long distance from the sink in the bathroom to the garbage can in the kitchen. So I thought, well, I'm already putting the toilet paper in the toilet, and it's only 3 baby wipes. So surely if I rolled them up in a nice little ball, I could throw them in the toilet. And so that's what I did, and the toilet flushed, and the story ends happily. And then about 15 minutes later, my wife, because she knew we were having guests, decided to go in and make sure that the bathroom was redded up. And she says, Rob, did Hank flush something down the toilet? Now, at this point, I sort of know that I'm probably in deep shit. But I said, I don't know. And my wife starts to be like, Hank, you can't do that. You can't put things down the toilet. And I'm like, well, let's take it easy on the young man, right? We don't need to yell at this guy. We're not going to yell at him. Now, what I was unprepared to do was tell my wife, do you think maybe it had something to do with the 3 baby wipes that I threw in the toilet because I'm too lazy to walk to the garbage can? That I was unprepared to do at this moment. So I just said, we don't know. It could have been anything, but let's not yell at Hank. So my wife says, okay, and get the plunger, and it's not having much effect. I got this little, like, I don't know how long it is, maybe like a 3-foot auger, put it in, no effect. And then, I was like, all right, I went to the store. I had an adventure at the Dollar General right down the road, too. I won't get into that story, a story for another day. Suffice to say it, some gentleman was yelling at me at Dollar General. Completely different story. Anyways, I got a plunger, some of that gel Drano, and some Febreze on top of it. Because I figure if you're getting toilet equipment at the store, you might as well get scent stuff, too, because I want them to think that this fat, hairy guy, like, had some sort of explosive diarrhea, and that's why I'm buying all these plungers and stuff. I just threw that on top. So I bought the Febreze, I bought the plunger, I bought the Drano. Back to the house I go. So, back at the house, I take the Drano, I put it in. It says leave it set for 15 minutes, then put hot water in. I do that. 15 minutes, hot water, put it in, flush, works. I flush again, works. So, at this point, I was going to pick up my friend who's going to be staying with me. I get about 10 minutes down the road, and my wife calls and says, I thought you said that you fixed the toilet. I said, I did. I flushed it twice at work. Well, it's not working again. The water's getting high in it. I was like, okay, I'll deal with it when I get out. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm leaving out a key part. Once I thought I fixed the toilet, this was the opportune time to tell my wife that I actually put 3 baby wipes in the toilet. Because at this point of the story, I feel like crisis averted. Ha ha, I screwed up, but it's all better now. I fixed it. So I foolishly told her at this point, yes, I put the 3 baby wipes in the toilet. Who cares? It all worked out. Ha ha ha. She laughs. We laugh. We're a happy family. We hug. I go to pick up my friend. She goes, you're the best husband. Thank you so much for being so amazing at everything. You're welcome, wife. Anything for you. And out the door I go. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Then she calls and says, actually, it's not fixed. Now I've made a huge mistake admitting that I put the 3 baby wipes down the toilet. Because now it really looks, in her mind, this is the part I think is unreasonable. She's blaming me. She's acting like it's my fault. When I think this is a simple mistake that anyone could have made. So I can't believe that all of a sudden I'm the bad guy. I'm the person responsible for this. But anyways, that's the aggressive tone that she takes. So I go pick up my friend. We get back. I go to the toilet again. I fight with it. I do this. I do that. I do this. No results. So I come to the conclusion that the problem is the auger I have is only 3 feet. So I say, there's a Harbor Freight in the town next to us. I'm going to drive to that Harbor Freight and I'm going to get a 25-foot auger. This will be big enough. It'll go right down the trap of the toilet. It'll clean said baby wipes out. Toilet will drain. We're back in business. Everything is good. Now, at this point, it's approaching 7 o'clock or something like that. So I'm starting to get to the time where I know I'm going to be streaming at 9. I like to come up like at least 45 minutes before a stream, start to do some things to get prepared. So I go and I get the 25-foot auger. I bring the 25-foot auger home. I find my drill. It hooks up to the drill. Put the auger in. Goes in about 5 feet, a little longer than the previous auger. Then it gets stuck. Now, I don't know if you saw me open those pickle and olive jars the other day, but I'm a masculine man. Right? I could open a jar. So when I feel this obstruction with the auger, I decide, what would you all do? At that point, what do? Putting the auger in, feel an obstruction. So what are you doing? What would a man do? That's right, Miggy gets it. That's right, you muscle through it. So that's what I did. And so I start shoving this thing with all I have, just hammering it, shoving it. I tried pulling it out. It met the same. So I'm shoving it. No, maybe like 3 minutes, just everything I have, just. Then I pull the auger out. All of a sudden, what appeared to be the source of the obstruction is now laying at the bottom of the water in the toilet. Only it doesn't look like baby wipes. You know what it looks like? It looks like ceramic. That's what it looks like. So I reach in and I grab it and I feel there's another piece of ceramic. And ultimately I got about 4 pieces of ceramic about that size and then a bunch of real tiny pieces of ceramic. You see, I believe what happened is the lining of those pipes could not stand up to the overwhelming masculinity and force doctrine that I was putting into that pressure on the auger. Now, for me, I said, c'est la vie, no problem. I go back to my initial plan, which is let's continue to use Drano, hot water dish soap, leave it sit in there. It's slowly draining, flush, repeat process. Hopefully, by the end of the night, that process will dislodge said baby wipes and we're back in business. My wife says, actually, the problem is with a lot of these toilets that in the trap has that ceramic lining, and outside of that ceramic lining is more porcelain, which is porous, which means that you'll inevitably see leaks around the base of the toilet. And so now it looks as if my adventure that started trying to help my wife, and that's the key that I hope she and all of you understand. This all started because I, a good husband, attempted to clean the bathroom. Now, this is not my designated duty, mind you. I'm a professional streamer. I provide from the family by telling humorous anecdotes and political takes. That's my job. I also do man work, such as lawn care, fixing doorknobs that break, and other such things. But I went out of my way to clean a bathroom. As a gentleman, as a good husband, trying to help his wife. That's what I did. And it cost us dearly. I contend the mere fact that my wife didn't immediately jump up when she heard that there was a mess in the bathroom means that at the very minimum, it's as much her fault as my fault. Maybe I erred in judgment slightly of not taking the 15 steps to the garbage can with those wipes. Oh, and the other thing is, there's normally a little garbage can in the bathroom, but because we were going through the cleaning process, my wife had taken that garbage can out into the kitchen and was wiping it down so it looked presentable for our guests when they came. So garbage can not there. Normally I would have thrown there. I took the wipes to the toilet instead of 15 steps to throw something away is a lot of steps. Can we at least agree with that? Can we agree? No one's walking 15 steps to throw something away. Am I right? From my couch to the garbage in the kitchen is exactly 11 steps. That's as far as I'll go. After 11 steps, no. Someone else could take that garbage. So, what choice did I have? You can't just leave the wipes sit on the kitchen sink. I thought, in effect, these baby wipes are waste. And where does waste go? In the toilet. It seemed to make sense. So, I don't think I did anything wrong, is the gist of this. My wife disagrees with this. And I said, one of the ways I can make this better is, if I know one thing, it's that the Norbiters will help me out. I have one of the best audiences going. And I know that they'll donate enough money this evening that I'll be able to afford to purchase a new toilet. the ultimatum I was given was, and this was at about 8:45, she said this. If there is not a working toilet in this downstairs bathroom by this time tomorrow evening, you're sleeping in the living room. So, we're really shooting for raising enough money tonight that I could get to Home Depot tomorrow, purchase a toilet, and then fumble my way into installing said this toilet or getting help to install said toilet and making sure that it's operable by 8:45 p.m. tomorrow night. So there is my long-winded story on why my super chat goal is for a new toilet. Now, I'm still holding out hope that when I talk to someone who knows a little more about plumbing, that they'll tell me, that little ceramic inside your toilet that broke off, no problem. Your toilet's going to be fine. You did nothing wrong. If anything, those baby wipes that had soap on them that you flushed down probably cleaned the inside of your toilet. So it was probably a good thing, is what I expect. And I'm hoping a plumber will tell me. So that's the idea. Now yes, it is a potential for guests to urinate in the shower. That's true. But we do have a second toilet. I know. A lot of you are like, what? There are people out there that have multiple toilets in their home. It's true. It's the arduous task of going upstairs to get to the second toilet. But nonetheless, I feel like for a 24-hour span, we can walk upstairs to use the toilet if need be. So there you go. That's it. So let's get to the super chats. And then the idea is we're going to take call-ins tonight since I didn't have time to prepare for a show other than with my excellent guest there, because I was like a great husband trying to fix this toilet that was damaged basically through no fault of my own, because I tried to do the right thing and no one could blame me for that. The attempt, my heart was in the right place. The execution, maybe a little ham-fisted, but my heart was in the right place. So I know my audience will respect that, and I know we will achieve this goal this evening. First, let me put the link out to the StreamYard this evening, if you'd like to call in. Then I'm going to read some super chats. I'll explain the call-in procedure after I'm done reading the super chats. Let's see what gets said here. Balasanya for $2 says, our o'clock already? You got it. We're back an hour earlier tonight. Corey Barton for $5 says, people with willpower must be vigilant of the consequences of doing so. Agreed. But they also should go against people that retaliate against them and abuse Lawfare themselves. Jess Gerald, thank you so much for 50 gifted memberships. Absolutely fantastic. I'd say more, but I saw that you gifted more in a second, so I'll say more when I get there. Nico Pluto for $5 says, hello. Will the guest please define adults? He's using adults to mean like we need cooler heads to prevail. I know what you mean, though. I'm tired of this idea of the adults in the room as well. Jess Gerald for another 50 gifted memberships. Always incredibly generous. Jess Gerald, always appreciate it. Now, one thing is, I was incapable of setting up my super chat goal to factor in subscription, so it's just super chats. But that doesn't mean that you can't send subscription and they're not also heavily appreciated. In addition to that, you're also able to send to other places such as PayPal at robnoerr or through Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/robnoerr. I now have Cash App as well at $robnoerr. All of the methods of donation are appreciated and will help assuage the anger that my wife feels at the fact that I destroyed our toilet. Please, no one clip that out of context, because if you didn't know the story that I just told you, I destroyed the toilet sounds pretty awful in other ways. Robert Whaley for $10 says, I can't let Jess Gerald have all the fun. Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, Jess Gerald is, he's amongst the top. I gotta say, Jess, silent, Lost Avarice, there's some dudes coming for the throne, Jess Gerald, so, but no, you guys are always appreciated. Jess Gerald for another $10 says, this is my formal request to anoint Naughty Germ as Lore Master of Normal America. All those in favor say tra-la-la. Yeah, I think I saw Naughty Germ was given sort of the lore of being on notice, and he nailed it. Thank you. Robert Whaley for $10 says, y'all better start grifting or Rob's going to yell at you. Harump, yelling. I would like this reputation to go asunder. I guess at one point in my life, I wouldn't have minded being called a virgin, preferably before I was married and a father, though. So any donations that you can give would be appreciated because, you know. Also, I mentioned this yesterday, but this is Austin Hall. He claims that asking for $357 in donations a day is, quote, highly unreasonable. And now the major reason for my existence on the streaming platforms is to prove Austin Hall wrong. And so I will raise $357 every single day I can stream if possible. I think I have a decent shot of it. So that Austin Hall feels very, very sheepish. That's the goal. So feel free to get those super chats in and stick it in Austin Hall's craw. That would be fantastic. I had to choose my words carefully there. Naughty Germ for $10 says, to the Nors and the Norbiters, the official lore master. Thank you, Naughty Germ. BC Sides for $2 says, stop using tampons to clean, Rob. Hey, you use what's available. Also, I don't know if it was Les Stroud that I used to watch on Survivor Band or if it was like Bear Grylls or something, but I heard someone say that tampons are very good in a survival situation because they could stop wounds. You could also use them for starting fire and other processes. So, but no, it was baby wipes that I used. Tainted Holy for $2 says, looking forward to Andrew mocking you. 3-wipe Rob. Why would Andrew ever mock me? That would seem to be counterproductive. Jess Gerald for $10 says, Crappergate. Ashton Alwine. Yeah, Ashton nails it. It is indeed Crappergate. And then I broke the trapper in my crapper through brute force of an auger. They just don't make those things for masculine men like me, you know? Nico Pluto for $5 says, no more money for you, Rob. Your guest didn't define adults. Hey, punish him, not me, Nico. Only a Mr. Bill for $2 says, your doghouse is the restroom, I assume. That is exactly what my restroom will be. Felix donates $10 to the new toilet. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And here's Java Crow. It's always nice to hear from you, Java. For $5 says, I'm an apprentice plumber. Don't use Drano. And also set a new toilet. Never flush baby wipes. They're not intended for a plumbing system. If only you were with me, Java Crow, when I was cleaning up the bathroom and said, psst, don't do that. Don't put those in the toilet. Now, my wife also pointed out to me that in real big letters on the front of the baby wipes in the left corner, it says, do not flush down the toilet. And I was like, it doesn't say that. And then it does. It says it in pretty big, unmistakable letters. But I thought, yeah, but that's like how they tell you not to use Q-tips to clean your ears. It's all bullshit designed to make you buy other products. So I didn't buy it. I'm still skeptical. Robert Whaley for $10 says, solid gold toilet fund. Good enough for Trump, good enough for Noor. Thank you. I'm afraid I'd probably damage it as well. Vita for $2 says, I thought Rob was debating on Sarah Tomato tonight. That is next Thursday. I'll be debating on Sarah Tomato's show. BC Sides for $5 says, raise the goal because you're going to need the extra attachments, tools, and adhesives. You have to remember to let the drill do the work. Great streams. Thank you, BC Sides. Yeah, I definitely wasn't letting the drill do the work. I was hammering that in. And then Jess Gerald for $100. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. Again, Jess Gerald. My goodness, incredibly generous. Says, what was that, Austin? Oh, I assume Austin was calling you out, Gerald, saying there were people donating more. Oh, boy. And there's my wife. I told all of this. Courtney, I was just talking about how obviously you were correct that, you know, that it's all my fault, not your fault for, you know, it technically is your job to clean. And you let me go in the bathroom to attempt to clean it, but that's not your fault. And I also think that baby wipes in the toilet are an attempt to clean the toilet from the inside, which is a good goal. And that you should have known when it comes to using an auger that I'm so powerful that likely I would shatter whatever I was augering. You probably should have known that. But nonetheless, I'll take the L on this. I will. Now we're 57% of the way to the new toilet. So Gerald, yeah, Gerald's the boss. Gerald is the biggest whale on this channel. And I don't mean that he is a former player for the Hartford Whalers, nor that he's a big obese guy. I mean, he's a whale in the sense that he's a big spender, and he's always appreciated here. He did indeed flush baby wipes. We're over this. That's so. Come on, Courtney. You're still talking about me flushing baby wipes? This is like the lefties that always want to talk about January 6th. It's a long time ago. Let it go. Let it go. All right. I promise. Keep getting those super chats in, other donations that you want. But we're about to get to call-ins. Now, a couple rules on call-ins. One, I think that I'm likely to have more call-ins than normal this evening because everybody wants to get their 2 cents in on Jargate and Crappergate. Oh, yeah, and also I talk politics, so we can talk about anything that you want within reason. Couple things. We keep it within terms of service, so please, no calls to violence, anything like that that could get my channel banned, or you're going to instantly be booted. I don't care if you're someone that agrees with me or someone that doesn't. We can't run afoul of sort of the terms of service on these sorts of platforms. Also, I ask that you don't be upset if I only give you a small amount of time because I'm trying to be generous. Right now, we have 5 people in the call queue. So, for normal callers like Miguel, I see you're in there. Always appreciate your calls, Miguel. Probably won't have 20 minutes to give you because I am trying to end within an hour and a half, and I have more grifting to get to. So, that's all I ask, though. We're going to jump right in, hopefully in the order that people came. So I ask you to go with that. Also, one last thing before I come in. I saw people were asking. I'm going to place a actual post on YouTube about this, but yes, I am deleting my live streams off of YouTube. You could find my live streams. All of them will be on Rumble and on X, and I will not be removing those live streams on those platforms. They will not be behind a paywall. The reason that I'm deleting them off YouTube, now that this has become my primary source of income, I can't run a risk of people mass flagging me and getting my channel removed or getting community strikes or getting demonetized. So the best thing I could do is after the live stream to remove those live stream, or maybe I'll have a system set up where I could set them to private. But for now, I'm going to remove them, and I'm going to kindly encourage people to follow me to places such as Rumble. You could find me at Rumble at rumble.com/user/normal America. I'll place that in the chat right now. And you can follow me on X at just robnoerr on X. So there's the links. Let's jump right in. Mega Max, how you doing? I know you've been trying to call in for a while, so I apologize I haven't had a call-in show. So thanks for calling.
That's fine. It's just good to be here again.
Yeah.
So I guess my thing that I wish to do, considering that there was a centrist on before, is to issue a total fatwa against all centrists.
Okay.
Because my main problem with centrists, and it sort of goes with like the still classical liberal people, is that they just don't understand what fucking time it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's like,
you see this a lot with the centrists.
Oh, can't we all just get along? You right-wingers, aren't you going a bit too far? It's like, dude, come on. Have you seen how bad everything's gotten? Clearly,
I completely agree.
Playing nice with the left wing has not gotten us anywhere good. I mean, we just saw... I watched Oren McIntyre's podcast about it, just the cancer coup with Biden. We literally had a president who was completely cognitively declined, and you just saw it. It went from bad to worse over his presidency, and we already had a bad to worse from the start of his campaign to the start of the actual full campaign. Of first it was the Democratic primaries, then the actual election campaign, and then just all through the years, you just saw it went from meh to literally mumbling retard who didn't know where he was.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Listen, ultimately, I want to see the weaponization of our government against all peoples to be eliminated. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want to see criminals go to jail, but the idea that we're so flippantly using lawfare to go after people we don't like, whether it be Alex Jones and the massive fine that he had to pay, the lawyers surrounding Trump, Trump himself, the January 6 people, I would rather see a world where that sort of political lawfare isn't being done. But because we won't get there, because one side understands that they could get away with doing it with impunity, then the best we could do is sort of a mutually assured destruction to force upon the very people that seek for us and their enemies to live under these standards, to hold themselves, or to hold them to the standards that they seek to implement on us. That is the only chance we have of coming through with this. And I think that a lot of the calls to centrism that says, no, we wish that would stop, are people that legitimately wish it would stop, but that are people that just weren't going to vote for Trump anyway.
Yeah,
and that they'll always find an excuse.
Always do the call for centrism when the right wing gets in charge. It's always, oh my God, beware the right wing backlash. It doesn't matter that we are literally living in left wing hell world, where everything's gone to shit and kids are being like transitioned and stuff. It's the right wing backlash. That's the real problem. And that's what we got to do everything in our power to prevent from ever happening. Not left wing hell world. That's already happened. And we're actually kind of okay with it. It's those damn right wingers, man.
It's always like that. It's you're seeing it today. Radical lefty shoots people in DC. What's the mainstream media's story? Well, white nationalism on the rise. It's always that, like, well, to the extent that their criticisms of the left, it'll always be like, well, you guys should stop or the other side will do it. Yeah. And then to us, they say, hey, we want this stuff to stop, so you guys should be the bigger people and stop. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm tired of it. I'm tired. How about this? How about that?
It's cringe.
And listen, let me be clear. I like Ryan a lot. I respect him. I think that he's a person in good faith. I do, right? But let Ryan lament to the left the next time they win. Okay, now it's time to be the bigger people. How about that?
Yeah.
Let us be the littler people for once. How about that? Let us people that have been targeted. Let us that were mass censored. Let us that, like the January 6th people that were mass overcharged. Let the parents at school board meetings that were targeted. Let the pro-life protesters that had their homes broken into at gunpoint in front of their family. How about let us have the upper hand just once? How about just for one term, let us have the upper hand?
Let's see the actual right-wing backlash in earnest happen for once. Let's just see what it looks like. Maybe it isn't actually that bad. Oh my God, you'll have to go to church now. Well, maybe that might be a little bit good for your soul, bro.
Yep, I totally agree. So, yeah, I appreciate the call. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that this is something that you see the centrists do all the time. Well, if only you would change. If only you would, have a little more restraint. Then we would still find another reason not to vote for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
it's always something. Oh, and one more thing, I guess, just before I head out, is if you ever. I know there'll probably be some people in the chat that bitch about this for Kiwi stuff, but do you ever want to talk about one of the big massive censorship things going around? It's payment processors. Recently, MasterCard and Visa did a bunch of censorship for like Japanese companies on like, I think maybe pornography grounds or something like that, but it's just mainly censorship stuff. The payment processors are the real big censors people.
Well, we saw that with Enrique Tarrio. You saw it with sort of even the way they went after the protesters in Canada, that they were debanking them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. If you could prevent people, Alex Jones has gone through this. I think, or you're mentioning Kiwi Farms. I was unaware,
Kiwi
but
Farms,
I'm not
and
surprised.
Particularly Josh. He can't get a bank at all. And the crazy thing about this is you don't have a right to banking services, and they can deny you service for any reason and throw you off for any reason. And they don't have to tell you at all that reason because it is trade secrets.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, Mega Max, I'll get you out. We got more people in the chat, but always appreciate your call, man. Thank you so much.
No problem. See you around, brother.
All right, we'll see you. All right. I need you to give me a second. I apologize, Miguel. You have to give me 1 second. I have to go downstairs for something for a minute. So, really could use money for this toilet. I see my wife's in the chat there. So, we'll do a little big grifting here for a second. I'll be right back.
Rob needs money for this transition. So get out your wallet and quit your bitching. Birthday back at 7
Oh, that camera. Why does it do that? The light sometimes. There we go. All right, Miguel, we're getting to you, but I wanted to show you all something. Here are the baby wipes in question, and I want to show you something, right? Everybody talking trash. You're all talking trash, but I would like to show you something. See, it says flush. Right there, it says flush. So excuse me for assuming that they were flushable. Clearly, you can see. Again, I'll show you. It says flush. So no more questions on this. Baby wipes are flushable. End of story. The package blatantly says, naughty germ. Oh, Google if you should flush them. The package, these are special baby wipes that say flush. They say flush. All right. Miguel, thank you so much for calling in, man. What's on your mind this evening?
Not much. This is just my 1 week of working 2 weeks straight.
Ooh.
So I can try to get a little extra money so I can get a new control arm for my truck. It's starting to break on me.
Yeah, dude, I had problems with my car. I need to get it aligned. And I think that like something's out with like, I don't know. It feels like, I don't know if it's the sway bar, a ball joint or something. So I know the feeling. I got to get my car worked on as well.
Mind you, I have a diesel truck, so it is pretty heavy as hell. So,
damn. So what's on your mind, man?
Well, besides that, this is one of the things I have a problem with. The principal conservatives, libertarians, and even the centrists, they always want to be like, well, we got to stick to our moral ethics. We got to don't play nice and all that. The problem with progressives, especially the establishment progressives, they don't care about principles. They will break 1,000,001 eggs just to get an omelet. They don't care. And the thing is that the right doesn't wield power the way the left does. That's how they're able to be so effective for decades on end. Now that has begun to change because Donald Trump himself is not really a principled conservative. He doesn't go by principles. He doesn't have any moral ethics. So that's why he's more effective as a leader, because he's not bounded. He's not held back.
Well, that's just it. You heard all of this in Trump's first term. You heard all of these like establishment Republicans and centrists that were like, norms. We have to respect norms. And then norms were largely respected. And what happened? The left throws the norms out the window. And then once more, when Trump's in office, it's like norms. When we said no one was above the law, we didn't mean that you could arrest people that are politicians of the opposite political party. Yes, you did. You were directly talking about the absurd cases and going after Donald Trump. And you were all for it. And most of you said, well, we because the truth is, many of these people like the establishment orthodoxy, and so they don't want someone that challenges it. Or they are so brainwashed that they accept that sort of the talking heads and the people that have always been in charge somehow are authoritative. So when they go after people in illegitimate ways, it's like, well, tisk, that wasn't a great thing. But when the other side gets power, all of a sudden it's, whoa, let's rein that in. I'm sorry, we're not buying it anymore. And
I'm not buying it either.
My argument is quite simply, let me be clear about this. I am not advocating that Trump break the law or that his administration break the law. I would be against that. I've questioned when I thought that they were going too far. What I am advocating for is anytime there's smoke, I was told this dozens of times during the investigations into Trump, the bar for starting an investigation is very low. It's very low. Legally, that's how it works at the DOJ and the FBI. Fair enough. Then I hope that Trump's DOJ and FBI decides to engage in that very low bar to investigate anyone that they see as using their political position as weaponizing, or formerly in the FBI or any of these agencies as weaponizing. And by the way, I hope that Republican attorney generals in states around this country decide to do the exact same thing. Because that's what they wished and did to us and the people we support, and they deserve to live by the standard that they have set for everyone else.
Yeah, and they set a really low standard at this point, and they pretty much show their true colors. And at this point, just having the Justice Department, especially the Republican side, just to pass it up is a stupid mistake. I mean, you think they're not going to come after you? They will. It doesn't matter how principled you are. Your principles don't matter when you're on the losing end and getting whacked in the face every 5 seconds. I mean, you can claim be on the high ground about your principles, but when you're getting your ass kicked in a cage fight, that shit is not gonna work at the end of the day. That's what the left is doing. They don't care about principles. The only principles that matter is their own preferences. They're morally bankrupt. These are people on the left that are morally bankrupt. They don't care about religion. They don't care about what it means to be a good person. As long as it fits their own preferences, as long as it fits their own power structure, it doesn't matter how many people they have to step on, how many lives they have to destroy, how many innocents that has to get thrown into the fire. They don't care. And this is the problem with the right, especially centrists, libertarians, and principal conservatives. If you fight by the rules from the 1980s, that time is gone. You gotta get out of the past. The past is gone. You're not fighting on a clean slate. And this is why I hate it when they always fight Trump about they fight Trump about the terrorists. They fight Trump about the big beautiful bill. Yes, none of that stuff is perfect. We understand that. We understand that a lot of things that Trump is doing may be questionable, and you don't like the idea of weaponizing the justice system to go after the opponents for doing the same thing to him. They don't like the idea of terrorists, even though we've been terrified by all these countries, and of course the taxation. We were being taxed out the ass for everything, and we want to cut that down. Oh, we can't do that because it's going to just increase the deficit. Like, we're not fighting at a clean slate. We're fighting at a slate that we're pretty much in a disadvantage. If you're going to just do nothing, sit on your ass and do nothing because your principles are holding you back, you're going to lose. This is the final chance that we actually have to actually take back this country. If not, we're screwed. There's no country.
Yeah, and I'm tired of this sort of, basically this is the argument you get. This is with everything. It's the same that you hear with like the Ivy League schools. It's the same when you heard about social media and the censorship of conservatives. Well, you have to allow that to occur, or else no one will get those privileges. I'm of the take now, if the options are we get to attack you with impunity anytime we feel like, or the consequence is, oh my goodness, it will be bad for all of us, then I choose the latter. If you're unwilling to voluntarily rein yourself in on these corrupt impulses, and so that these institutions, whether it be the DOJ and the FBI, use lawfare, and all these left-wing attorney generals use lawfare to go after the people I support or after me, or that these social media companies will censor people like me. Because the big thing was, what's it called, like Section 302, when I used to talk a lot about, like, look, if you're going to have a place like YouTube that decides that they're going to selectively enforce terms of service against right-wingers, and allow left-wingers to get away with violations of terms of service, then I think that is them editorializing. And so it's not so much that they're being the public square. At this point, it's that they're being publishers. And so therefore, I think they should lose their protections under 302. And the answer that I would hear from the left all the time is, but that would end social media for all of us. So you have to accept either we get to censor you with impunity so that you can't have a voice, or we'll lose our voice too. And wouldn't that be horrible? I'm sorry. That's no longer persuasive to me. So the argument that, well, wait a minute, if you engage in lawfare to us like we did to you, that would be really bad for the country. I don't give a shit what your opinion is.
Well, it's fair game at this point because you did the same thing to me, so I'm going to do it right back to you. You can say two wrongs don't make a right, but at this point, just trying to be nice about it doesn't work because he's still punching me in my face. So you know what? I'm going to punch back. At this point, I don't care what arguments that people always come up with now these days. The principles always comes up with these days because they're not really helping. They're just allowing this stuff to happen. Like, do you really like to allow yourself to get abused every day, or just gonna get up and fight back? Like, I don't understand this. You know what I mean? There's ways to do it right, but damn. At least stand up for yourself.
It's the equivalent of, I'm not asking Trump to do it or his DOJ to do anything illegal. I'm not. But it's, to use a metaphor, it's like you keep getting punched in the face and someone sits there and watches it happen. And then once you raise your fist back to defend yourself, they go, whoa, wait a minute. don't you dare hit them back, because if you hit them back, when will it end? It's time for you to be the bigger person. And so you put your hands down and go, you're right. And then bam, you get punched in the face again. And that person's like, well, whatever you do, don't fight back though. Because if you fight back, that would be bad. And that's what gets me. So many people like Ryan. I like Ryan. Don't get me wrong. But it's just, I've talked to so many people, or I've read so many people's commentary online where it's like, if just the right would do this, if they would just do this one thing, then I would vote for them. But no, I didn't vote for them. I didn't. And I wouldn't, because I think what they do is too much. So I wouldn't. But if they just this one time turn the other cheek, then I would also find another reason not to vote for them. That's what I would do. And despite the fact I'm saying what the left did was unforgivable, I'll either not vote for either side, or I'll go right back to the left if the right does the exact same thing that the left did to them. So I'm sorry. To those people I say, I just don't care. I don't care what your opinions are on this. And who knows, maybe Ryan will be correct politically, that it'll cost Republicans or Trump in 2028, because if he engages in any percentage of what was done to him, to his opponents, that all of a sudden centrist will hold him accountable. I say fuck those centrists. They're the reason that this stuff was allowed to happen in the first place. So if they choose to intentionally sabotage our country by allowing the people that started this shit to get back in power to do it again, so be it. I guess that's their decision to do. I think that it would be a huge mistake. Instead, I think that they would understand when someone gets punched in the face 10 times, they're allowed to punch back once. So, hey, Miguel, thank you so much for calling in. I always appreciate it. You're always one of my favorite callers. So hopefully we'll talk again soon. I'm going to get a better schedule here in the weeks coming of exactly what each show will be, when the next call-in show will be. So hopefully I get that out so people like you can see that. So you want to shout yourself out, channel, or anything like that on your way out?
Well, you can find me on Twitter called Mikey the 4th WX. I do weather posting and I'll do political posting. I've been blackmailed by the WX community because I called out their top members, like Eric Webb, the Dr. Eric Webb, for his stupidity. So you can still find me there. I just not really part of the community because I've been blackmailed and pretty much singled out.
Wow.
Along with a few others like Ryan Maui and Joe Bastardi.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, hey man, thanks so much for calling in. I don't know any of those people, to be honest, but thanks so much for calling in, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you next time.
All right.
Take it easy, Miguel. All right, I'll put that link out. I will respond to a little bit of this. Don't worry, we'll get to all your super chats. We're still not at our goal, even though we are, because Jess Gerald donated like a shitload of subs, and they just don't show up there, but we're going to pretend we're not at the goal. We're not at the goal! We're not at the goal. There's the link. If anyone else wants to call in, we still have more people here. Articuno says, LMAO, it's not about policy. Rob will just never vote for the left. Who said that? Why would I vote for the people that seek my censorship? Why would I vote for the people that seek that people that are like-minded to me be thrown in jail? Why would I vote for them? Would I vote for a person that has traditional left-wing policies if I thought that they were a better politician overall? Sure, I am on record saying that I would have voted for Bernie Sanders over Jeb Bush in 2016. When did I say that? Quote me. I want you to quote me. Someone go back and timestamp when I said I will literally never vote for the left. Someone do that. What I said was that I have guests that will always say, oh, if the Republicans would just do this, if they just do this, then I would vote for them, but they'll literally never vote for them. That's what I said. The only side threatening to put people in jail is the right. Really? Did they threaten to put Trump in jail? Did they threaten to put Roger Stone in jail? Did they put tons of January 6ers in jail that didn't commit violent crimes? Did they put Steve Bannon in jail? Did they put Peter Navarro in jail? Just curious, Articuno. Just curious. Because the left would never do that, right? They're not threatening that. There you go. When we do it, it's legitimate. It was legitimate. See? When Steve Bannon violated a subpoena, we threw him in jail. That was legitimate. When Hunter Biden violated a subpoena, well, when Merrick Garland violated a subpoena, well, there you go. That's the guy that's saying, oh, so it's not really about policy. You're just saying that you're partisan. That's what's going on. You're partisan. What's up, wife?
Can you keep it down? I was trying to use the restroom.
Go to the bathroom. Leave me alone. Break another toilet. Listen, the poll right now that's up says it's the baby wipe company.
It's you.
I'm slightly more people are blaming me than you, but the baby wipe company is in the lead in the poll.
I don't blame the nice people at Huggies Baby Wipes.
Did you see? It blatantly says flush.
It does.
Flush.
Your thumb is conveniently.
I have a deformed thumb. Don't make fun of it.
I'm aware.
So, be gone.
I am.
I'll do an Andrew Wilson. Drink, woman.
Oh. No, you're okay.
Okay. Thank you, though.
Yep.
Thanks for considering it. I
Bye.
appreciate it. Anyways, where was I? Oh, I'm Articuno. I'm a lefty. You're partisan. You're partisan. Your side's threatening to put people in jail. When we do it, though, you're the only side that does it. But yes, we do it, but it's always justified. Next up, we have Help.
Hey,
What's happening, Help? How you doing today?
doing okay. How are you?
You know, other than this toilet stuff, pretty good.
And it's totally your fault. Just a heads up.
What? This is outrageous.
You took baby wipes out of context. I mean, who does that?
Listen, it says natural care. It says flush, cucumber and green tea. Who
Out
would've
of
thought-
context.
Natural ingredients in these things. You know?
Out of context.
Out of context. Is that it? You just calling in to heckle me?
No. I was going to talk to you about one thing, but then you brought up the 7-2 decision again, and I do want to just kind of slightly correct you on that, and
Okay.
you can look this all up and investigate it more yourself. But I do believe the first one that they came down 7-2 in that case, they were overbroad. They were saying basically stop all deportations, stop them. They weren't saying just aliens and act. They'd said stop all deportations until we talk about this. So I believe that is a little overbroad. And then in the second one, that one I feel is way more egregious because a lot of their facts were wrong in the case. If you read the dissents, they actually go over all the different things that were wrong in the case that the Supreme Court was talking about. And then they didn't censor the district judge, but they were like, the district judge shouldn't have done this. He wasn't doing a good job, basically. But they haven't censored Boasberg. They haven't censored any of these other judges who are doing blatantly wrong things. And so I do agree that part of it is, they're trying to let the lower courts, fight it out. But at the same time, they are saying, well, this district judge did the wrong thing.
I think you're mistaken about the 7-2 saying to stop all deportation. I would, if you have a link, I would happily look at it. But the decision you're talking about was April 19th, 2025, right? And it had specifically to do with those being deported under the Alien Enemy Act, at least in my reading of it, if I remember that correctly. If there's another case that I'm unaware of that was decided by 7-2, I would be open to reading that. But I was unaware that the Supreme Court said that Trump is no longer allowed to deport anyone. I think that would have been bigger news if it happened that way. So I think circumstantially, the evidence suggests maybe you're mistaken with that. And I don't think that my specific reading was. I think it's limited to the Alien Enemy Act.
Okay, maybe I was thinking it was more. I'll have to read through it again, but I thought that something about it was overbroad, and it might not.
Well, now I'll be honest. I didn't read through it with a fine tooth comb, and normally I fall on the side of Thomas and Alito, and I know they both dissented. And if I remember specifically, some of Alito's dissent had to do with sort of the specific nature in allowing sort of the way that this sort of decision came down. I can't remember the specific reading of it. It's been a few days since I read it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess the point I was making on it wasn't the definitive victory that so many on the left were declaring that was like, see, Trump, it's illegal for Trump to deport people under the Alien Enemy Act. No, that's not what they said. They said that they have to be afforded some level of due process, and so it had to be decided like what that was. again, I can't claim to be an expert on that, but that was sort of my initial take on it. But overall, I think you're correct. I think that the Supreme Court should have stepped in much earlier and stopped many of these activist judges. And the fact that they were hesitant to do so encourages that activism to occur all throughout the country. So the fact that they're not censuring people like Boasberg, I think, is a very bad look and ends up emboldening them. And I think that that's the Roberts Court. I mean, he's been a disappointment since he's been made Chief Justice, since he's been named there.
And they have actually said, the district judge was hasty and he shouldn't, wasn't fast enough, basically, and he should have been faster and stuff like that. And so it's not a censure, but they have basically said you did bad.
Sure.
Which I feel is very wrong on
Right.
so many levels. But yeah, that wasn't the main thing I wanted to talk about. I think
Sure,
we
sure.
should go and read that just to get a better kind of idea.
Sure.
The main point that I did want to bring up today, and I do understand people talking about principles and we shouldn't be principled and so on and so forth, but I think the biggest issue with the right is they keep falling for the narrative traps from the left. They keep falling into the framing of the left that isn't correct. Today, Ryan, just for an example, today Ryan actually admitted, hey, due process doesn't mean a trial judge.
Sure.
But everyone on the left these days is saying, hey, due process means they need a trial. They need to go through the court system, every single one of them, which isn't true. Due process for illegal aliens is different, but that's not what the left is saying. They're not saying that it is, but they're
you're
absolutely
right about this. For example, again, I'm no expert on this, but I know that this is the case. The levels of due process, depending on all sorts of things, changes. So, for example, if you're a citizen, the due process you're entitled to is different than if you're lawfully here on a visa, which is different than if you're lawfully here on a green card, which is different than if you're unlawfully here. Like, there's different levels of due process. And then the nature of what you're charged with, there are different levels of due process. So, for example, your due process rights under a civil case might be different than your due process rights under a criminal case, etc. So this term, you're right, that the way the left sets the framing of this, it's like, oh, they're entitled to due process, which means a jury by their peers where they have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not true, right? The due process rights, for example, when it comes to illegals, it may be as simple as a summary hearing. Can you prove that you're not illegal? No? Okay, you're out, right? Or if you look, for example, at what are your due process rights to not get deported if you're here under a lawful visa? You don't get a trial by your peers. In fact, quite the opposite. The Supreme Court has ruled that deportation itself is not a punishment. So the idea that it would be the equivalent of if person here on a lawful visa is accused of manslaughter, right? The due process rights afforded to them would be very similar to it would be if it was me or you as citizens of this country. We would have the right to hear the charges. We'd have the right, all the rights that you hear, right to counsel, right to a speedy trial. All of that would be true. But that's not true if it's your visa is being revoked. The due process is different. And not only that, the rights afforded to you are different. So our free speech rights would allow us as American citizens to say, we hate the United States. We think that it should be overthrown. Like, we should be allowed to say that. But if you're a guest of the country, should we be forced to accept people that are our guests that are saying we hate you, we want to overthrow you? No, I don't think so. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. This idea of due process, the average person hears it and thinks, oh, due process. Like, if I was charged with a crime, I would have the right to an attorney. I would have the right to a speedy trial. I would have the right to hear the charges against me. I would have all of that stuff. No, that's not necessarily the due process that would be afforded. In fact, historically, the due process afforded to illegals is very limited when it comes to the punishment being deportation or the consequence being deportation. I would argue, though, as one caveat to that, I do think that the due process should be more significant than what the Trump administration thinks when it comes to sending people to a foreign gulag from a country that they've never been. For me, that is a consequence that is higher. You're not just being accused of being here illegally, you're being accused of committing a crime. And so you should have the right to hear those charges and to present a defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the due process thing specifically. I'm just talking
Sure.
about the framing in general. And I think that framing and how they've been framing things is how they've shifted the Overton window. Like if you just by going or the pendulum, however you want to talk about it, the way they frame things is how they shift it. Because um, even looking at like global warming, even at looking at climate change, even looking at gay marriage and things like that, they shift it. They say these things like, oh well, if you're against gay marriage, then you're against gay people in general and you hate gay people and so on and so forth. And it shifts the narrative from, okay, well, why do they need the gay marriage? Like, what's the actual underlying harm here? And oh wait, there's these things called civil unions that are coming up through the things, and maybe one day civil unions would be the equivalent of marriage for gay people. But no, we have to do this for marriage. Why?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the framing issue specifically, right? It's something that I say all the time. For example, uh, if you don't want illegals here, oh, you hate immigrants. Not necessarily. Some people want legal immigration severely curbed. Other people don't. There's plenty of people, particularly people that are whispering in Trump's ear, that say more immigration, more legal, but
Yep.
we're against illegal. So the left conflates that issue. They say, we'll pretend when you say you're against illegal immigration that you're against all immigration. They do this constantly, right? They set the framing and they'll change it when they choose. For example, the framing is you're a stochastic terrorist if you say something like, well, I think that they're importing a bunch of people to replace the domestic population for political reasons. They'll say, that's great replacement theory. That's racism. How dare you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, then on the other hand, they'll say, well, yeah, actually, we think that they should be given the right to vote, et cetera, et cetera. Or they'll be against immigrants coming in under refugee status from places like South Africa. They set the framing when it came to kids in cages. It was a human rights abuse. How dare Trump do it? When there's 4 times more kids in cages under the Democrats, they say, well, they always, and it's because they have so much institutional and cultural power that they're used to people relying on them for sort of setting the stage of what we're talking about. And the right still does this all the time, myself included. Despite the fact that trust in the mainstream media is going down in all groups, the truth is, in large ways, they still set the narrative. We're talking about Jake Tapper's book, right? We're talking about what someone like Bill Maher says. We're talking about what the New York Times story is. Most of the time, we're responding at this story's shit. This is what they get wrong. But they're still setting the narrative. You know what we're not talking about? All sorts of shit like the abuse and lawfare against Trump, or the pandemic and the origins of it and the heinous things that they did. All of these stories they're able to quickly eschew, and we fall for it all the time. That's why when I try to talk, and I understand this from the sake of my audience, it might get tiresome to hear me repeat some of these stories a lot of times. But to me, these are central to understanding where our culture and politics are. And we allow the other side to get away with just skirting on with never having to answer serious questions or face consequences because we allow them to set the framework. So I think you're right that one of the things we need to do is be conscious of that and try to do a better job of reframing and not setting their framework. One example of that, and you tell me, we'll get you out of here on this, but I'll leave you respond and have the last word. Maybe in the conversation of my conversation, in the context of my conversation with Ryan there, maybe it's sort of the framework of, the right, Trump going after his opponents, like setting the framework of like, no, the standard has been set and we're just following through with the standard of what legal application of the law should look like. And we support law enforcement and no one's above the law.
Yeah. And I that actually is the framework we should be going for. Is right now everyone has this kind of ideal that, oh, politicians are above the law. Like they shouldn't be, but we feel that they should be above the law to a certain extent. And that's that framework right there is bad for this country. Like if they are above the law, then doesn't that just make them nobility? That, oh, hey, we can't touch them because they are the nobles, they are above us. How dare we as the peasants rise up against the government and have them accountable to us, right? Like that's the framework has changed so much that we almost made them into nobility by allowing them to kind of say, hey, if you go after us, then you're just doing bad things. Like it's going to hurt the country if you go after political people. And
Well, I do, but you're right. But at the same time, we have to be reasonable, right? Like, for example, if you get caught speeding, you accept that you should be charged, right?
Mhm.
But would we accept, like, if the DOJ decides under Trump, for example, or we'll say under Biden, it might be easier, right? If they're like, I want you to follow every single Republican, and as soon as they go 2 miles over the speed limit, you pull their ass over. Would we say, well, to not charge them when they got pulled over, that would make them lords and they're above the law? Clearly, you see the difference. Like, of course, there is a level of which crimes that are so heinous that they're charged because they're charged. But when you start specifically targeting people for politics, when you start doing that, and then you sort of understand how that leads to a slippery slope where it's like, okay, well, now every politician's going to do that. And the problem is, like Ryan was saying, and I agree with this, there are certain crimes that, by the very nature of them, people in Washington are committing all the time. So are we going to throw 90% of the people? I don't know. Maybe we are. Maybe I'm okay with that. But there's clearly a problem when you break that glass ceiling and it's coming from one side of the aisle only. So I'm all for Trump doing it back to them, but I would have sooner that it never occurred. I would have sooner that it never occurred that Trump would have been charged with 34 felonies for a campaign finance violation that Hillary Clinton basically did the same crime and was given a small fine for. I would have said it would have been sufficient if you thought that Trump broke the law, which I still don't think he did, to give him a small fine, to not have felonies, to have this big trial, et cetera, et cetera. But they decided to go after it. But in a normal world, I would have said, no.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying for political reasons. I'm saying across the board. Like, I believe that as these people are our representatives, they need to represent us perfectly.
Do
which
you
means,
let me ask you, do
Yep.
you disagree with the Supreme Court decision that said that there's certain forms of presidential immunity?
So I don't disagree with that because of official acts. So if somebody is working as a president and they do something and it turns out bad, like, obviously they need to be able to try to do things in their capacity, right? So I also say the same thing with Congress. Like, there are certain things that Congress does, like if they pass a ban on, I don't know, uh, life for certain people, like, I wouldn't agree with it, but if they pass that, that's part of their duties. So they're just doing the representation of the people as they see it. But if they're accepting bribes, if they're doing campaign finance law violations, if they are speeding, things like that, absolutely, they should have people going after them. And
I don't know. I just think that there are certain crimes that are of a non-serious enough level that I don't think there needs to be vigilance in going after people that are committing them that are elected members, because what happens is the very nature of politics is one side will be the boss of significant law enforcement. And if you incentivize, like, look, all you have to do is keep an eye on them. That's all we're saying. Keep an eye. There's nothing wrong with that. We should keep an eye on everyone, right? And if you incentivize saying, well, shit, we're going to bring the hammer down on speeding, then it justifies, like, you'd be hard pressed, for example, to say that the Biden administration did anything wrong. Hey,
Yeah, but
shouldn't we,
you have to-
let ask yourself this. Do you think that if a hostile foreign nation was trying to subvert our democracy or our constitutional republic, that we should stop it? Probably. Okay, well, then the FBI was right to look into them and their nefarious efforts to spy on the Trump campaign, to get involved and intertwined in the Trump campaign. We're just trying to protect the country. No one's above the law. I mean, if you're saying we couldn't look into them, but wouldn't you look into, like, an average American that we thought had those ties to the Russian spies? Yeah, we would. So we're just doing it to Trump. We're doing it to him as well. And so I think that you could clearly see that there should be a different level when it comes to stuff like that.
I disagree just because of deterrence. Like we talked about, like you talked about with Ryan about the illegals coming here, with the deterrence actually in place. We saw a gross reduction in them coming here. And you would agree that there is massive corruption in Congress, right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So what's the deterrence? They went after Trump, so now there's less corruption?
No, because it's only one-sided and it's only
right. But that's
against
the
a
incentive.
previous president.
But that's the incentive. And do you think for a second that Trump's team's going to be going after Republicans with as fine-tooth comb as the people that came after him?
I would really hope so, but I disagree. I don't believe they will.
Right.
I 100% agree with you there. I'm not saying that it's a good thing to have just from one side, and I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that if we elevate these people above us, then they can do what they want with impunity. And
but they can't already in certain aspects. You're for presidential and congressional immunity for acts.
Yes, but that's a very specific thing, right? Not
But
everything is an act.
but again, no one's suggesting congressman murders something. Well, no, they're above the law. You can't. No one's suggesting that. What we're
But they accept
suggesting
bribes
is
all the time, and
okay,
nobody
but
cares
then
about
you
that.
could charge people. That's different. Yeah, everyone, at least, okay, not everyone. I certainly agree that those sort of crimes should be charged, right? Mishandling classified documents?
Absolutely.
I disagree. I think that 95% of people do it that are in Washington, so I'm against those sorts of charges. I would also be for limiting those charges against people that aren't high-ranking elected officials as well. But I understand the utility of, like, listen, do you think Pete Hegseth should be charged? All the people that were on that Telegram?
So I believe that the person who invited the guy, if there was anything criminal that happened, should be charged. But from what I understand, there's nothing criminal there, so there's no charges that could be brought.
But if this was a device, let's accept that Telegram wasn't one of the devices you could use. Let's say they used another app that they thought was encrypted, but it wasn't on the approved list. Then Pete Hegseth and everyone should be charged.
It wasn't classified information, though. It was just secret information. So can you be charged for just giving out secret information, or is it only classified?
Who said it wasn't classified?
Everyone says it's not classified.
I don't know that that's true. They may have said that it wasn't classified, marked as classified at the time.
Actual pertinent information about where those strikes would happen. There were no.
But that doesn't matter. There's stuff that's classified all the time. No. Hear me out. There's stuff all the time that's classified that you look at it, you're like, well, shit, this wasn't pertinent information on specific location of attack. Right? In fact, this is quite benign. And oftentimes things that are classified are overclassified and they end up getting declassified later. That's why the rules and regulations of sort of the things that govern these things say that these are the approved devices, because it shouldn't be up to you to make a judgment call as to whether or not you think it should be classified. Because if you're mistaken...
Here, I'll concede on the point. If this was classified, then yes, the person who added the non-approved person onto the chat should be criminally charged. I 100% agree with that.
But wait. It wouldn't matter. There would be more to it. If it was classified, even if no one without a security clearance was on there, if it was using a non-approved platform, then it's still a crime, right?
Well, intention also matters in crimes, right? So if they knew that it wasn't correct to use this platform, then yes, absolutely, they should be charged with a crime.
Okay, so do you think if you use that as a defense, as just presumably not a high-ranking, I don't know, but I'm assuming you're not a high-ranking elected official, do you think that defense would fly for you? Oh, sorry, Your Honor, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to use Telegram.
I mean, there would be lesser charges that could be brought against me, and I do think that if that's the case, then the same thing should happen to Pete Hegseth and the rest of them. But I do believe that they couldn't catch me on a full, hey, you committed treason because you were on the wrong app.
Well, no one's. I think that's absurd. Saying treason.
Whatever the higher,
should they have been charged with any crime, even a low-level crime?
If they did a wrong thing, then yes, I do. I
disagree. I think that for me, that's so petty, and it would literally lead to thousands of people. In fact, it'll lead to a complete stagnation of anyone working in Washington, right? Because it'd be like, holy shit, you're throwing the book over something so little, and it's we have to do it. Well, it would be throwing the book. It's going after people for criminal charges for something very benign. Well, you used the wrong encrypted app. Instead of saying, hey, let's explain to you the importance of this. You're not supposed to do that. Technically, it's a crime. So, I don't know. To me, it's quick to see how easy things would get out of control with that. I say that Trump's team should absolutely go after Democrats for any technical crime that they commit completely, because that's what they chose to do to Trump. But the ideal situation wouldn't be that I think it makes you a king if we say, listen, even if these are charges that we would charge against a lower level people, to charge the highest ranking officials in the country for little benign things that aren't that big of a deal that almost everyone in Washington do seems pretty ridiculous.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
I
get your
agree
stance
to disagree on that,
because I'm making the same argument, or you're making the same argument I said when I was upset that Ford pardoned Nixon. If Nixon committed crimes, then why should he ever be pardoned? That was my argument when I was younger. right? You would agree with that,
Mhm.
right? No pardon. No, suck it up, buddy. Who cares that you were the former president? But the ramifications of what that would have done to the country were pretty significant. So the pardon actually, now, not to mention, I think Nixon was set up personally, but that's not even, if we just accepted it at face value, right? Like, for me, it's like, should Trump, let's say that Democrats win in 2028. Should Trump pardon his children?
If they committed crimes, yeah.
What if they didn't? What if he
Then
just thinks that Democrats are going to, do you think Democrats are going to go after Trump's children if they win?
So I don't believe in the blanket pardons that Biden did. Like, I don't believe that is constitutional, like, at all.
Well, I'll tell you this. They're going to
Yeah.
go after Trump's kids.
Yeah, very well.
They definitely will,
Yeah.
and you may very well say, well, hey, no one's above the law. So if they had some speeding tickets that weren't paid, I don't know. For me, it's just
Well,
like,
I mean,
I
even
think
that wouldn't be covered under a pardon because that's state.
Well,
but yeah,
yes, but you see the point I'm making, like that they'll find some benign
yeah.
shit.
No, I
If
get
you
what
look
you're
at
saying. I
if you
understand what
look
you're
at the
saying.
campaign finance laws, like go ahead and really look at them sometime. They're so damn confusing. Like I said, like what,
Yep.
like the nature of what Trump was charged for in the Bragg case was basically this. His lawyer decided that he was going to go out of his way to pay off Stormy Daniels, right? And so he's just like, here's some money, go away. And then he came back to Trump and he was stealing money from Trump. He admitted in court he was stealing money from Trump as well, and was just like, hey, pay me back some of that money. And that was it. That's 37 felonies. Now, me and you could agree that that's fucking nonsensical, right? But
Oh,
by the
absolutely.
way the law is written and the way that they've written it, that's the crime.
I actually disagree with that premise. I don't believe the law is written that way. I don't believe Trump should have had those charges brought against him.
Well, I
So-
agree with that, but the way that they wrote it was a way. Who gets to decide that? Does the Supreme Court weigh in on it?
Well, no, like they actually broke a bunch of statutes by charging
Says
him with the
says
crimes.
who?
Says most of the legal experts. Like,
Okay, and how did they enforce that? So Trump was never charged with those crimes?
he was charged with those crimes, but it was a corrupt system. Like,
I
again,
agree with
this
that. Totally
this
agree.
is this is
And
why
yet, who
I
had the
want,
authority?
the state courts in New York.
Right. And so they decided that they had the authority, and that authority prevailed. They were actually able to charge Trump. And the only
Yep.
reason Trump's not in jail right now is because he became president. Otherwise, he'd be in jail. So you saying, but I feel that the way they applied that corruptly, totally agree. The problem is they feel otherwise, and they're the ones that get to decide. And if we accept, well, as long as the people in power feel that they are applying the law in ways that technically is legally applicable, then it would be wrong to say that we should say certain people are off the hook because of their station. I mean, for me, it's, the Supreme Court very well could have weighed in and said, yeah, it's shitty. They did this for political reasons, but technically this is an acceptable application of the law.
But my point is that if we did have deterrence by saying, hey, if you do something corrupt, you're going to be put in jail, then I don't think those charges would have been pulled against Trump. Now, I agree
But
that
then
the
charge
person
someone for a real crime like bribery. I don't think that charging Trump for campaign violations, campaign finance violations, or any of this other, like,
Well, he
there's
wasn't charged
different
with that.
levels of this. Like, I'm saying, like, going after people for mishandling classified, they suggested going after Hillary for that, right? Do you think that led to any deterrence that people in Washington stopped mishandling classified information?
Well, no, because they knew that she wouldn't be charged.
But Trump was.
Yes, but that was a different situation.
Okay, so then that led to deterrence.
No, because he's not a politician. Like, that's the thing. Like,
Wait,
don't
what?
they don't see Trump as a politician. They see themselves as above the law,
Well,
but they don't see other people.
that might well be true, but then it would at least have had a deterrent effect to anyone that's pro-Trump, like J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis, any of those people. Surely they
Not
stop.
really.
Why? They would say that we fall in the same category. We are on Team Trump or Team MAGA, so we'll be targeted as well.
Right, but they feel that the politicians, like specifically the class politician, is above the law. And
Okay, they
because
can
of-
feel, but they would not feel like a class politician. For example, Peter Navarro was a class politician. He went to jail for violating a subpoena. So surely then everyone in Trump's orbit would say, oh shit, we can no longer violate any subpoenas because we know we'll go to jail. and we can no longer violate mishandle classified information because we will go to jail. I don't think that it has had that deterrent effect. And just because certain people think that they're above the law, I assure you, if Trump charges, let's say he could somehow extend the statute of limitations and charge Joe Biden for mishandling classified documents, it will have almost a zero effect in people that are mishandling classified information. The same with FARA violations, right? We saw that people went down for FARA violations, such as Trump's former, what was his name? I can't think of his name right now. But Trump's former campaign manager, he went down for FARA violation. That didn't stop people from failing to register foreign lobbyists. Maybe if they decided to start charging hundreds, if not thousands of people, so be it. But the point I'm trying to make, and I'm not even saying they shouldn't. My take on that's been basically your take. Either charge all of them or charge none of them, right? But the point I'm trying to make is there are things that I think are worth charging. Serious crimes, pay for play, bribery, those sorts of things. But I think there are things that aren't that serious, right? And that I don't think that I'm gung-ho to be like, I want each administration to be like, okay, boys, get your microscopes on. We're going to be looking now at every politician to make sure no speeding tickets, no campaign finance violation. We're throwing the fucking book at them because that's what we would do to the average person. Nah, I think that that's sort of a bad idea.
Yeah, no, and again, like this, the whole where we got to from here is just the whole framing situation, like how we frame things, and that's kind of the whole point I was trying to make.
No,
It's
I
like,
think you're absolutely right, and I'm not saying your position.
if we're saying that framing is happening and that we're shifting the pendulum or the Overton window using these framing devices, then the people of the right, they need to break these framing devices.
I totally agree.
They
and I'm
need
not even
to-
saying you're wrong, right? Like, for example, I say, should it be a crime to meet with a person from a hostile foreign country and discuss dirt on your opponents? I don't think so. But let's say that we say, yes, that's a crime. Okay. Then all I want's that to be applied equally. So if you're going to charge Don Jr. for that or investigate him, then you have to charge Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
Because she met with same deal. Actually, her team got dirt from a Russian. Trump's team didn't. The lawyer vessel in this guy. That's all I'm saying. So for me, first and foremost is I just want equal application. I would tend to not want to over prioritize going after even petty crimes, especially when I think there are far more serious crimes that are being done by large swaths of our elected officials, such as insider trading, things like that. I think once you start hammering a few of them, hopefully on both sides of the aisle, I don't give a shit if it's Trump. I don't care. I think once you start throwing the book for those sorts of things, then yeah, that would have a culture change where people will say, oh shit, I've been made an example of. But I do hesitate to say, I do think that there is a difference in scale of small crimes that maybe me and you would commit and that we would maybe be charged with, but not necessarily doing that to the president of the United States because he has an unpaid speeding ticket, so we're going to haul him in, or, you know, a jaywalking ticket, so we're going to haul him in. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. No, I understand that. And actually, just real fast, and then I'll hop off. Technically, the members of Congress aren't committing insider trading because it's not technically insider trading, and it's this whole thing that they've made up all these laws to protect themselves. But you know, people on Wall Street, they can't insider trading, even though Congress has more information. So yeah, just
I see. I did not know that, so I'm glad you. But that sounds about right for them. So
yep.
All right, Help. Thank you so much, man. Call in next time. Always a pleasure. Yep. And yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Sorry it took so long.
Oh shit, no, it was good. We'll see you.
Bye.
All right. I promise we'll get to the rest of the calls here. I want to just shout out Jess Gerald again on Rumble for gifting 2 memberships over there on Rumble. Remember, my live streams after they're done will be deleted on Rumble. So if you're watching halfway through, you started halfway and you're trying to watch the whole thing and you're like, why the hell did this end? That's what's going on because I'm afraid that I'm going to get mass banned if I leave these videos up on YouTube. Let's get to Matt. What's up, Matt? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you do. I thought you'd say, doing all right. Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing tonight? What's up?
I'm not doing puns on the name, but actually, I kind of want to lean into, funnily enough, I have something tangentially related to the framing stuff of the last conversation.
Okay.
I think so there's a meta conversation here, which is like moral justifications versus legal justifications that people like to hop between with when they come to this kind of stuff. But looking at the legal justifications for the Alien Enemies Act arguments that people make of oh, well, people are being deported to foreign gulags always just doesn't sit well with me. And I'll explain like the rationale. Uh, you, in the time that this was implemented was, the turn of the 18th century. And so at that time period, it was during the French Revolutionary times. And you can read letters of our founding fathers talking about the French judicial system. And we're talking about a time in which people would be hung in gibbets for stealing a loaf of bread. And it was specifically made to deport French citizens from the United States of America, fully well knowing that they may be sent over to France and die from exposure inside of a gibbet cage the second they went over to the Revolutionary France period of time. And so the notion that, oh, it suddenly falls into this greater like realm of due process because the law is being implemented this way is ridiculous. Like when they wrote the law, it was specifically made to be used for this very scenario. So that's kind
But
of
I
like
think that
another thread.
I think that there's differences in that as well, though, because like you said, it was during the Revolution, right, or the French Indian. Which one did you say, or did I
French
mishear both?
Revolution, and it
French
was
Rev-
actually it's also there was like a French and there was some wartime stuff happening there. There was tension between the French and America at the time.
So the argument is it was implemented here because the French Revolution's going on, and French nationals are finding their way into the United States on behalf of one of the two sides in the French Revolution, and they're trying to attack the United States in some way.
Well, no, there's the French revolutionary spirit essentially that was going on at the time period. And so there were kind of, how do you say, agitators. It would be who was it? It was Adams versus, I forget the exact thing. I'd have to I could pull up a document if you want to see it. But it's basically just, there was a French revolutionary spirit where there are supposedly French agitators who are trying to get more so French spirits inside of the Americas. There was tension there. And so they wanted to basically get rid of some French citizenry inside the Americas. And there were a series of like 3 bills that were passed. 2 of them expired, 1 of them stayed, and that was the Alien Enemies Act. But the Alien Enemies Act was specifically for, in times of incursions or times of war. But the other one that was just meant for tamping down on just, more commonplace thoughts like freedom of speech, etc., was used to deport a lot of the French people inside the Americas. But they were sending them over to France because they just didn't like the French people essentially trying to rework the American system in this French revolutionary spirit, so to say.
Yeah, I would have to look into the specifics of it. I would say that one clear difference I see is sending people back to France. That would fall into the category of like, well, we could just deport the members of these gangs back to their country of origin and then make sure they don't come in again. Sending them to a country that they have no connection to nor have ever been, where we know that they will be placed into a prison, seems to be a bit extreme with no ability to defend yourself. So what would your recommendation be? Let's say that there are 20 people right now outside of Home Depot, and we know for sure 17 of them are in Trendeargawa, or however the hell you pronounce it. But all 20 of them get thrown in the van and taken away. What rights do they have to protest? Actually, I'm not a member of this gang. None? We just send them, fuck you? Like, we don't care. We said you are, therefore you are. We have to prove nothing?
I mean, I agree with the current due process for deporting illegal immigrants, which is just ask them if they are above the age of 14 and if they're an American citizen. And if they fail to answer that, they're deported.
Yeah, but why not just, we see you're from Guatemala. Okay, so we're going to deport you to Guatemala. Problem solved. As opposed to, we're going to send you to El Salvador just because. And you're going straight to prison. Like, there's a remedy for what you're suggesting already, which is you're an illegal, deport you to your country of origin. If the country of origin says we can't accept you, then at that point, we see if we can make arrangements to send to a different country. Maybe that's El Salvador. Once they're in El Salvador, that country could do whatever the hell they want with them. Sure, fine, great. Right? But to just say, no. We're not just saying that you're an illegal. We're saying you're an alien enemy. And we are aware that that means that we are going to send you to a country you have no connection to, as opposed to trying to send you back to your country of origin. And we're also aware that that's 99.99. In fact, I do believe there's an arrangement made that the people we deport under that statute go straight to these gulags for an indefinite period of time. I would like to see those people have some right to be like, whoa. I can at least hear the charge that's brought against me and at least offer some sort of rebuttal. I don't think that's unreasonable. And some of the suggestions that people are making are like 24 hours to file a habeas petition. That doesn't sound unreasonable to me. That doesn't sound overly burdensome. And, so for me, I think that I don't see the problem with that. And I do see potential problems because presumably, maybe I'm incorrect, maybe you know about this, could I, an American citizen, be deported under the Alien Enemy Act?
Aliens Enemy Act. Actually, yes, I do believe you can.
So, I mean, what's to stop the Biden administration from coming in, or the, Kamala administration saying, yeah, and Robnoerr, you're fucking an alien enemy. You're out. And by the way, you have no you have no rights to even rebut these charges. Goodbye. We're sending you to a foreign prison.
Well, I completely agree with you on all of those premises. My argument, as I kind of started out with this, which is the moral versus the legal interpretation, right? Like morally, I'm 100% on board with everything that you're saying, and there has to be like moral, considerations when we do all of these things. The problem that I have is like when people go towards a legal interpretation, because those are the justifications that people are arguing in a legal framework when they're saying, oh, it was never intended to be used in this way, et cetera, et cetera. It was precisely being used in this way, which is why I think the proper remedy for doing it would be to have Congress like change the rule or to have some other system in place.
I mean, the court disagrees with you for what that's worth. And so they're the final say on what's the legal interpretation. I would prefer to think that there should, if we accept that the moral ramification is that 24 hours notice to file a habeas petition and provide some sort of defense isn't unduly burdensome. And the courts have said, look, legally you have to provide 24 hours notice. So both the moral and legal standard in that sense seems to match up. I guess it's not something that I'm sweating to say, well, I actually think the court was wrong and we should just deport all of these people in ways that both me and you would say would not meet the moral standing. I guess that's the way I would look at it. That's not to say that perhaps an original reading of the Alien Enemy Act and the invocation of it may follow what you're saying. And maybe the Supreme Court back in the time of the original invocation would say, actually, we completely agree with Mehmet here. That's the way it is. That's not the way the courts are applying it now. And that's the legal end all be all at this point. And I think that aligns with what I think morally should be the case. Having said that, like I don't really have a problem with, deporting these people. Just deport them to their country of origin. If the country of origin says no, then you make other arrangements. Okay.
Well,
then you go.
I guess there's a larger thing at play here, I guess, which is why I think that kind of thinking has kind of got us into this position in the first place. Because what ends up happening is like this, the courts will start saying like, we have a moral justification for revisiting this law or reinterpreting this law, which is how, 40, 50 years ago, we had a bunch of restrictions on gun rights because they just said, we're doing moral justifications for interpreting the legal system. And that has a far lesser burden than doing anything else. And so all of a sudden we're doing rule by 51% majority, rule by like just edging it out over the end. I think pragmatically you're right. And at the end of the day, if you're really pushing on this, I think you're right in a lot of your end conclusions. It's just, I'm worried that what keeps on happening is it comes down to, we decide that a law is worded in such a way, and we, due to our more modern sentimentalities, don't agree with the way it was written, so we'll just reinterpret it. But then what stops somebody else from reinterpreting some other law and some other law and some other law?
But that's written in anyways, right? I mean, that's sort of inevitable. Also, I mean, I don't know, and I'm telling you, I'm just quickly searching this. My reading of this is that it doesn't seem like this was applied maybe in the way you're suggesting with France. So it says the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 never formally applied to French citizens in a significant or documented manner. Enacted in July 6, 1798, during heightened tensions with France amid the quasi-war, the act was designed to allow the president to apprehend, detain, or deport male citizens of a foreign enemy nation during wartime. While the quasi-war involved naval conflicts and strained relations with France, it was not a declared war, so the act was not invoked against French nationals. Historical records show no major instances of use against French citizens, and the act's first notable enforcement was against British in the War of 1812. The lack of formal war with France meant the act largely was unused. The act was used in the War of 1812 against Great Britain. It was enacted in 1798 as part of the Alien and Sedition Act, allowed the president to apprehend, restrain, or remove male citizens of foreign enemy nations during wartime. Its initial use came in 1812 when the government targeted British citizens, particularly those suspected of disloyalty or posing a threat, through specific instances of enforcement were limited and poorly documented due to the area's record keeping. The act was later used more prominently during World War I and World War II against German, Japanese, and other enemy nationals. Now, it makes sense in the
reason it
sense that
wasn't-
we're at war with Britain and there are British citizens in our country and say, fuck you, we're sending you back to Britain. And I suppose in that context, Britain could choose to punish those people if they want. But that's a sort of a different context than, well, we're not at war with France and we're just saying, fuck you, we're sending you back to France because we think you're an alien enemy.
Well, at the time, the reason they didn't use it was because they released like 3 bills, and one of the bills was far more broad, and so they used the far more broad bill instead of the Aliens Enemies Act at the time. And there's arguments about how restrictive the Alien Enemies Act is, but it just because there wasn't as you read, there wasn't a formal war, and so they didn't use it at the time period. But they had something like the Aliens Friends Act or one of the other acts that they had done at the time that was specifically made to just hit a broad net, and so they used everything in that broad net. The notion that I was trying to get at was just the circumstances of the people who were to be deported, not necessarily the usage of the act on the people. So the idea that it required a higher threshold if people were to be imprisoned or treated unfairly in the country of deportation.
Yeah, I just think that, even the fact that there was other acts that were maybe more broad, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when we agree on the moral conclusion that there should be some afforded due process, but technically, legally, that wasn't the way it was originally used, well, then we wouldn't focus on this more broad act. We would focus on the Alien Enemy Act specifically. And when it was never used, like in that context, it was a different act that was used. I don't think that speaks to this act particularly having changed the legal definition, right? And so when it comes to the Alien Enemy Act specifically, it seems the only time it's been invoked was literally when we're at a literal war with another country, and to say you are citizens of that country and we think that you are basically a spy for them or acting on their behalf, so we're going to send you back to that country. What's happening now is different. We're not in a declared war with Venezuela. We're not sending people back to Venezuela. We're sending them to a country that they have no connection to. And it seems like even back then, I don't know, I would have to read how it was invoked in 1812 if people had any sort of due process rights when it was first used in the War of 1812. But I take your point that there is judicial activism and rewriting laws based on what we think democratic whims are, and I prefer more of an originalist context. I really do. But I think the harms you're talking about are inevitable regardless if we give 24 hours notice of due process to these people with the Alien Enemy Act. So I do get what you're saying, but for me specifically, the moral considerations outweigh any specific legal This is very similar to an argument I had about deploying Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and what is the standard legal definition of the term insurrection, and applying a definition that existed in 1848, like right after the Civil War, and was used only a handful of times, right? And then that same definition would have been applied thousands upon thousands of times from there till now, because all sorts of things have met the definition of insurrection, but never applying them. And then all of a sudden today going, yep, we're going to apply it to Trump. My argument to that is clearly the way this has been implemented has changed over time, and that the courts do no longer consider the standard legal definition of the term insurrection to mean what Bowden Paulson says it means, with these 4 criteria that basically means 2 hippies shoving a police officer because they want weed laws to change would be an insurrection. But then if I'm adapting your position, I could say, yes, but there's no reason that it should have changed. So yes, those people did engage in an insurrection. And just because courts have decided to, for 150 years, never use this, and there were thousands of things that met that definition of insurrection, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be used this way today. And so I sort of reject that mindset in general when it comes to, we always have to go back and look specifically at what the word for word, what they were talking about when it came to these things. Obviously, it's I'll say this real quick and I'll give you the final words. It's contentious because I'm saying I'm an originalist, but I think there are specific ways in which it doesn't necessarily apply in that sense.
And I think I agree with your overall like framing of the situation. I agree with your overall conclusion of the situation. At the end of the day, I think I would agree with all of the moral conclusions that everybody down the chain has gotten to when it comes to it. I think that it's just there's a little bit of hidden like shenanigans going back, at least because people will, as I said, shift between the moral and the legal framework. And I think the legal standing for this is far less grounded than people like to assert, just because of the sentiments of the people at the time and the thought processes of the people who were writing the bills at the time. And it is a shame that we get to this situation in which we have a Congress that doesn't want to change the bills, and instead we have to rely on the judiciary kind of legislating from the bench a little bit in order to get these things to do the morally correct thing.
I definitely agree with you in the overarching sense of it. When it comes to this particular, all I could do is call out what I think is right and just. I'm not a legal expert, right? So I call out my layman's reading of stuff and what I think is right and just. And I will call out the Trump administration when I think that I disagree with them. Having said all of that, it's clearly that 95% of the criticism that's coming at Trump for this stuff is coming in an approach of bad faith. People that had no problem shirking their responsibilities under the law when it came to millions upon millions of illegals entering, and now will do everything they can to ensure that these people get to stay because they were actually in support of all of these illegals coming. So in that sense, I agree with you that it's just, sour grapes and them attempting to bend the law to their whim, to their advantage when they see it, and then shirking the law as soon as it becomes disadvantageous to them.
Yeah, the same people who are like, you can't fire these people because you didn't give them 2 weeks notice are the same people who are, willing to do all of this, let's say, modern day interpretations of past laws. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's the biggest hang up. I think you're right to just say, hey, morally, we can move past this. I do worry about that creeping effect of just like, hey, if we can do it, they can do it, and everybody does it. And,
it's fair.
That
it's
is
fair. Yeah, that is the modern courts and what they've done. You're absolutely right. So, hey, man, thanks so much for calling in. Really appreciate it, man.
Will do.
All right, take it easy. All right, we got one more call. All right, and then I'm going to get to the grifting. Shame on you, people. Shame on you. We're only 73% towards our goal. Actually, we passed it because Jess Gerald gave at least $100 in memberships, but we're going to pretend that didn't happen because only Super Chat goal counts when it comes to that bar up top because I'm an idiot and don't know how to set it up properly. But we'll forget about all that. And let's go to our resident amateur plumber, Java Crow. Thank you so much. Apprentice, not amateur. I'm an amateur plumber. That's a little different than being an apprentice plumber.
Yeah, I'm under a pretty good master right now. But Rob, it wasn't your fault. How could you have known that Andrew would have crashed out after you mogged him by opening the pickle jar and ran flush on those baby wipes? How could we have known he would have done that? Truly, it wasn't your fault.
I would not be surprised if Andrew came here and it personally destroyed my toilet after he saw me put wipes in, because we all know those wipes wouldn't have damaged the toilet. We know that. And so he threw something else down the toilet. He was like hiding in the closet, like, the linen closet in the bathroom. You never know what that slick bastard, what he'd be capable of. So.
Oh, I assumed he just injected blow dart testosterone darts right into you. So when you use the Yager, you just destroyed it, clearly sabotage.
Next time he'll use them on himself to open those jars of pickles, hopefully, or olives, I guess, but yes. Yeah, he said the attacks continue, I saw on Andrew from the lefties that are going after him for Jargate.
It's so unfortunate to have that. It's always funny, though. You see Jargate, and you see all these people on Twitter just looking at it and going, oh my gosh, Alpha Male couldn't open a jar. And it proves his very point when Jake just comes out and opens it up. Weak man had to appeal to strong man. Never appeals to the woman. Regardless.
Yeah, Jake, and you can't, listen, you can't compete with the Aussies. They're fighting all those giant spiders and fucking crocodiles and stuff. A nation born of criminals that were sent there. It was a convict island. So, They're not the smartest folk,
Hmm,
but damn,
a
they grew up
convict
strong.
island, you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
What if there was like a place where we were going to send all of our quote unquote convicts in at like a gulag and we just didn't care what ended up happening to them? Actually, I had a question about this, Rob.
Sure, you
So
got it.
do you find there to be an actual moral issue with sending illegal immigrants, people who might come in illegally to abuse the welfare state, or people overstay their visa? Do you view a moral issue of sending them to El Salvador, to these quote gulag camps, as opposed to their country of origin, if we know where their country of origin is?
It depends. There's a question of the morality of it in general. So let's forget about. Let's see if I get what your hypothetical or what your question is. Forget about the Alien Enemy Act. Forget about whether or not they're members of a hostile gang. Just in general, you're an illegal. You came here. You knew that it was illegal. You came here and you're living here illegally, and we catch you, and so we say, "Fuck you. We're sending you off to prison in a foreign country." Yes, there is slight moral problems I have with that, if I'm honest. I don't know that the punishment fits the crime, I guess is what I would say. It'd be the equivalent of saying there are people that take advantage of it. Like, for example, do I think people that abuse the welfare system in our country should obviously be punished? Not just including forced to pay back whatever they took, but should be, punished. Sure. Do I think that they should be put in a harsh prison indefinitely? Probably not.
Maybe not, but this is where I would launch into, maybe not with one of our own American citizens, but this is where I would make the distinction. Why is it our duty to ensure that your citizens are safely put back in your country? That's my issue. If we're going to just say, listen, you come here illegally, you overstay your visa, we're a serious country, we don't take that. We'll just send you to El Salvador, to these supposed gulags. Why is it our fault that some nice Aussie man overstays his visa? That's Australia's fault. You should take care of your citizens more. And if you're going to come here, why shouldn't you have like a high degree of like wanting to care for it? That's my argument. I don't see why it's our duty to care for other citizens who come here and for whatever reason end up being here illegally. I feel like it's a great deterrence.
I don't know. I think like maybe you're making an argument for imprisonment here, but imprisonment in another country. Listen, there's this sort of stuff's happened. So there was this, one of the worst kept secrets is the United States used to contract, don't quote me on this. I think this is dredging way back into my debate years, like circa 2005. We used to contract with the government of Egypt in something we called extraordinary rendition. So what would happen would be we would get, suppose, a terrorist, right? And instead of like giving them what limited due process they were deserved, we would be like, well, that's burdensome. So instead, we'll send them to Egypt, because in the United States, you remember there was this whole, is waterboarding torture? Are you allowed to do that? Egypt don't give a shit about none of that. Egypt will be ripping fingernails off and chopping fucking arms off, and they don't give a shit, right? So the United States would be like, hey, we're not doing it. We don't torture people. We just send them to a country that we have an agreement with that torture them for us. And I had a problem with that, because I'm like, look, if you want to pass laws that are like, this is the fucking law, and if you get caught as a terrorist, you have some sort of, due process claim to argue, actually, I'm not a terrorist. But if you are, or if we think that it's like, a Jack Bauer type situation, like, oh my goodness, we have 24 hours to find out where this dirty bomb is, then the circumstances change. But in general, it's like, I don't know. I think that we should handle that in the United States. If we think you're a criminal, then we handle it here. The same would be true of these illegals. If we think the punishment should be detention for the rest of your life, then man up and do it in the United States. I don't think sending them to a third party as opposed to back to their country of origin. Now, is it fair that the United States has to pay to send the Australian citizen back? Maybe not. But then what you do, I think, is you say, okay, then we'll increase tariffs on Australia in this case until it meets the obligation of whatever the payments are that are necessary to cover the cost of these flights back. So if we send 100,000 people back to Australia, I think that'd be insane. But, and each one was $1,000 per person, then we put tariffs on to the tune of, what would that be? $10 million? That's what we do. We say, okay, you're going to pay us that $10 million, or we're going to tariff you until we earn that $10 million for you. So maybe that would be, but I do think that the idea that the punishment should be indefinite detention for being here illegally and not committing any other sort of heinous crime, I think is a bit much, in my opinion. I think that it suffices to send them back to their country of origin. The punishment should increase if we send them back and we find out they come again. Then you could talk about imprisonment in our country or imprisonment in other countries. But for for what it is, I think that it would be a bit much to detain every illegal in El Salvador for the rest of their life because they are here illegally.
Maybe. My main argument is I don't think we could do it here because that's precisely the point. It's not our problem. It's not our duty to take care of whomsoever else. And if El Salvador is happy to take them, they're like, hey, listen, bring them here. We'll put them on sewing machines. We'll reform them. We'll put them back out in society. Because, I remember I saw a video, they have like their violent offenders. They just like lock them away forever, no sunlight. And then the rest they have like on sewing machines doing whatever, learning apprenticeships. So I don't even know if it's necessarily a gulag, but still I'll just go with the principle of like a gulag. Like,
let me answer real quick. It's tangentially connected to someone in the chat says, what do you think we did at Guantanamo? Yeah, we did that shit. There are videos and pictures. Rob, are you dumb? Yes, we did torture people. And yes, it was massive scandals when the videos and pictures came out. Not only was there massive political upheaval, but then there was claims that were made at all sorts of UN and other types of governing bodies that the United States was engaged in torture. And so what we realized is the bulk of that shit, if we outsourced it, then it was much harder to directly prove that the United States did it. Are you dumb? Are you claiming that extraordinary renditions didn't occur? Is that what you're claiming? When you're calling me dumb? Just curious. Anyways, sorry. Sometimes you gotta smack the haters around.
Yeah,
I was nice to the toilet gate haters. I left them off the hook, but the rest. No, Nathan, I have no hard feelings. I'm just obviously using the same language you use.
Where's that one guy? He's always disagreeing with you. He
HN?
Constantly gives you money. HN. Is HN not here today?
He's here. He was. He hasn't given any money yet. We haven't achieved our goal, and he hasn't given any money. What's he thinking?
I think we should send HN to El Salvador until he sends his money in. He is illegally squatting on the robnoerr stream. So we have to do the just punishment of sending him to a gulag for 30 years minimum.
Gulag! Send him. Lefty, that should be it. We'll send the illegals back to their own countries, but Lefty, straight to the gulag. No joke. You remember when there was I think it was Project Veritas, way back when, I think it was maybe 2020, where they caught that Bernie campaign worker that was like, if we win, we have to send Trump supporters to re-education camps. Remember that shit? It was caught in hidden camp. Yeah. That was, and everyone was just like, well, it's Bernie, it's his supporters. What can you do,
Okay. Let me take a little bit of a devil's advocate position. Let me argue for a second. Let's say we did send leftists to El Salvador gulag camps. I would make the argument that we are simply exiling them out of the United States. I don't think being exiled is necessarily a horrible punishment. I think if you're doing something awful and vile, like being a leftist, I don't know, you can only plead ignorance for so long, in my opinion. We just exile you, and there's El Salvador right on Mexico's borders, ready to just pick you up and, just whisk you away.
I disagree. I think that obviously sending them to a place that we know they're going to be detained is bad. And I also think expelling people from the country for having political disagreements or free speech disagreements is also bad. But I appreciate the
Come on, Rob.
I guess I'm weak. Me and my standards. No doubt, though, many lefties, remember, what was it? 40 to 50% of them wanted you interred in a camp if you didn't take the vaccine. 1/3 of them roughly wanted your children to be taken away from you. 55% think that it would be justified to murder Trump. So I won't hear from them saying, can you believe that someone called on Rob's channel and offered a hypothetical that we should all be expelled for? Okay. I'll defend them, but
as the infamous Sam Hyde once said, they want your kids horrible things done to it, and they think it's funny. So when you take power, just remember that. Well, that's all I have.
Hey, Java, thanks so much, and thanks for your plumbing expertise. And I promise I will not let my wife damage our toilet ever again. So thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, that's it for callers tonight. Now, I'm not going to leave just yet because we haven't achieved our goal here tonight. So I knew I said that I would be done at midnight, but that's just not true. Let's get to some more super chats, and then I'm going to yell at everyone like an old man yelling at the sky. Just kidding for $2 says toilet fund. Thank you, just kidding. That will go right to the toilet fund. Nico Pluto for $5 says, no toilet fund here. You failed a long time ago with the sewing machine. Look, I'm not even going to get into the lore. I did not break her sewing machine. The sewing machine came up missing. We are assuming because I was cleaning up the basement and throwing garbage out that it was in a bag or a box that got thrown out. But there is no proof of that. And once more, the fact that I'm blamed for doing something to help my wife where perhaps something not intended occurred is ridiculous. You know how much of my stuff gets tossed out on a regular basis? And I purchased her a superior sewing machine. Alex for $2 says, for the loo. Maybe we'll buy a loo instead of a toilet. Maybe a WC. Balsania for $2 says, like if you think HN should call in. Felix for $10 says, Wipegate. Pretty good. We got Crappergate. We got Wipegate. With Ghost for $10 says, it's definitely Mrs. Nor's fault that the toilet is broken. Thank you. Finally, someone seeing sense. With Ghost for another 10 says, what are your thoughts about the big, beautiful bill? What do you think the odds are that it'll pass the Senate? I'm going with it won't pass. I also think it won't pass. I think it'll fail in a 49 to 51. I don't like the bill. I think the fact that Doge had a bunch of suggested cuts and that Congress implemented none of them is absurd. The narrative of, yeah, but we have to fund it just this one time to encourage growth and then we'll be able to cut next time is literally the same story that we hear every time. It's the same story we heard under Trump for 4 years. And no one's ever going to, we just have to accept that the Republicans are the party of increasing the budget and the Democrats are the party of massively increasing the budget to spend on things that want to directly harm you. That's it. There is no party at this point, including Trump and MAGA, that's interested in reining in the insane debt. So I hope that their plan of, but we're just going to make the government grow so fast that we'll be able to outpace the debt ends up working. I'm skeptical to say the least. Robert Whaley for $5 says, just because Nico said not to. Yeah, Nico, what's up with that? Nico for $2 says, stop sending Rob money. Another reason to send to spite Nico. John Ruck for $2 says, got to get one grift in today. Leaving for work soon. Always nice to hear from you, John. Thanks so much. Tristan for $5 says, agreed, Nico. The faster it gets to 357, the shorter the stream. Now you're stuck with me because we didn't get to the 357 by midnight. I hope you're pleased with yourselves. Brock Van Wagner, $5 says, this is my endorsement of Mission Impossible. The final retconning. Retconning? Thank you, Brock. And Grassroots Hegemon, gives 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Grassroots. Now, technically, we've probably met our goal because I can't figure out how to get the gifted memberships. And I know there's been at least 100, at least 105. So I know we met the goal, but I'm going to pretend we haven't, and I'm going to make that super chat bar set. Now, I know I sucked. I know that I probably broke the damn toilet. I know my political takes are mediocre at best. I know that I'm a piece of garbage, that I'm a coward, that I'm this, that, and the other. I know that my thumb was covering up that it says do not flush, and I cleverly tricked you all by like putting my fingers or thumbs over it to say, see, it says flush. I know that you all see through my clever ruses. I know that I was joking yesterday that I knew that Andrew Wilson never fired me and I was just hamming it up and playing a character. I know you guys know that. And I know that you're all fed up with me and think, you know what, why would we ever give this guy one dime? But allow me to present you with the most important reason to donate to me. Somewhere out there tonight is a man who goes by the name of Austin Hall 9179. And he thinks donating $357 a day, or at least a stream, is unreasonable. Now, this guy is going to declare some super big victory if I have a day where I don't get to this 357 goal. At this point, with all the goals I have for this channel, including providing for my family, pushing the culture war forward, never taking a step back, helping the Crucible grow their brand and dominate every debates that I do or anyone from the Crucible does, getting real-world political victories. All of that stuff's important. But you want to know what's more important than that? Proving this bastard wrong. Nothing drives me like spite. So, Austin Hall, 9179, I will not be ending the stream until I reach that goal of $357. Now, with any luck, as I continue to grow my channel, we'll have more people, and so therefore the burden will not be placed on each individual's folks like Jess Gerald, folks that donate a tons of money, because we'll have more people that are donating. But until said time, I need your support. I need your support. We cannot leave Austin Hall 9179 achieve victory. The smug bastard will no doubt reach out to me immediately. I'll be devastated. Robert Whaley, thank you so much for the 5 gifted memberships. Ashton thinks it's big wipes. They're keeping me down. The bastards. We will not give in. We'll keep going. That was just CIA NSA mind control race, making Rob say he was guilty. Yes, yes, yes. My wife says, it's Rob. I am Rob. I'm glad you knew my name. So last night I played, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to grift money here? Well, I suppose we could, the fantastic Black Elk. The amazing Black Elk put together a video yesterday of the highlights of my crash out clip surrounding Jargate. Now, for those that haven't followed Andrew Wilson, couldn't open a jar. I can't do the TikTok invasions yet. I have to figure out how to set it up on my computer. Oh, Grassroots Hegemon, another 10 gifted memberships. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Naughty Germ. Yeah, that's the problem. I just have to show this. Then we'll be good. We go. Or is it this? Is this what people were waiting for? This is what you were waiting for. Oh, look at that. Nothing like a midnight little gherkin. Oh, yeah. Note to self, brush teeth when I go downstairs. I'm not so sure. Going to bed with pickle breath's a good thing. As I use my restroom downstairs. Oh, shit, never mind. The great Mr. Ubercross. Speaking of attorneys, love to have you on the show sometime to talk. He says for $10. Rob, wipes in the toilet. This is basic stuff. However, I still respect the grift. Also, I understand the toilet issues in the American household. I have a toilet handle that is driving me insane. Of course. The great Naughty Germ for $5 says, Laura says it was the baby wipe company's fault, not Rob or Courtney. That's true. The poll does not lie. We polled, it was baby wipes. All right. So the great Black Elk took my long stream yesterday during the day, and he clipped it down into a nice little digestible 10-minute video. So let's watch the saga of my crash out from yesterday. That's true. There was a Storybots episode about the toilet and how you're not supposed to put things like baby wipes in the toilet. And I've watched that Story Wipes episode a bunch of times, but I thought it was left-wing bullshit, and so I challenged it. Anyways, here we go. For your all's enjoyment, I give you robnoerr's Jargate crash out. Limp-wristed boss can't open a jar of olives. If you show him up by opening a jar, you're fired. I'm going to respond directly to his allegations surrounding the Jargate fiasco and sort of give my take on it. Now, of course, I'm talking about my recent employer who has just fired me, Andrew Wilson, Now, Andrew, who knew that I just left my job and waits until like the day after that I leave my prior job to then fire me from working with the Crucible. But that's okay. I'll be all right because although I might be unemployed technically now, look at that. I'm not some limp-wristed pansy that can't open a jar of olives. I'm more than capable to have the grip strength to crush any jar put in front of me, let alone a measly jar of olives. In fact, I'm a little peckish right now, if you'll give me a second. A bit peckish. 1 second. This is funny, Cordy. I think I'll enjoy myself a small snack right now. Oh, look at that. It's amazing. It's a really great feeling to just be able to open a jar at whim. You know, some people don't have that luxury. No amount of grifting or money in the world will help some limp-wristed pansy be able to open a jar of olives. Now, according to Andrew Wilson, this was tampered with. This jar was tampered with. Clearly, no human being could just open a jar of pickles or olives based on their own might alone. Surely there was some form of technology, some trickery that was employed. Surely. That's what Andrew says. So he's like, you're fired. Like he trumps me. Rob, you're fired. Except he does it live on air. He doesn't even call me. Live on air, I get fired. No longer an employee. Hey, Rob, I know you just quit your job last week so you can come work for the Crucible. But if you looked at the fine print of your contract, it said, when your limp-wristed boss can't open a jar of olives, if you show him up by opening a jar, you're fired. So I guess that was in the fine print of the contract. So I missed that. So then he has to try to save face. You have to understand, I was trying to defend Andrew. I was defending men everywhere, the patriarchy, Americans. Some damn convict Australian named Jake Rattlesnake showed up Andrew by actually opening this jar. So I was standing up for America. I'll open the damn jars. And what do I get for it? Fired. Fired for it. Andrew had his whole audience. Was it a pop or a crack? It sounded like a crack. A crack means that the jar was tampered with. It was a tampered jar. That's what happened. Now let's play that again in slow motion. I want you to really listen to the sound this time.
All right, everybody.
Notice the form there? See that? That's how a man does shit. Tap.
One.
Watch this forearm strength that you're about to see. Look at the grip. I'm surprised that the jar didn't shatter.
Two.
This is what a man's grip does.
Three.
Listen to this sound. That's what a man looks like. That's the sound. That wasn't just that jar popping. That was the sound of that jar begging for mercy. That's what it was. Now let's compare that, shall we? Let's see the physical specimen that Andrew was.
Supposed to open the pickle jar? I gotta grip it.
Uh-oh, Andrew. If you can't open it
Your
either.
hand greased the whole top of it. Literally slippery.
Didn't see me using a shirt, did you? Didn't hear me making excuses. I just opened it like a man.
Sorry,
I'm supposed to open the pickle jar?
Another opportunity with
Grab me a paper towel so I can dry the top of it off.
You're the big strong man. There you go. Come on.
I can't grip the fuck.
Now, was that a pop or a crack? I couldn't tell there. That sound there. Was that a pop or a crack when Andrew was opening it? I missed it. Oh, I'm sorry. There was no pop or crack because he was unable to get it open. I just heard the squeakiness of his own muscles squeaking as his rubber wrist really strained itself trying to open it.
Fucker. Like, I gotta have a way to grip it. I gotta grip it. Try it. You fucker. That bullshit.
Notice how, here's my favorite part of this video. Watch how Andrew takes notes after Jake opens this. So he's like preparing. He's like, oh, I gotta take down notes after I watch the real man open this. Watch.
You fucker. That bullshit.
There he goes. Yeah, write down those notes, Andrew. Note to self, fire Rob, because he could probably open pickle jars. Note to self, write that down. But as bad as this is, as bad of all this is, I think the person that I have the most beef with is Mr. E, the producer there for Andrew and his show. Mr. E, bring up the clip. Yes, sir, Andrew. I'll bring up the clip, sir. Bragging about, I'm Employee of the Month. Check out this cool image I made of me, Employee of the Month again. Rob doesn't work here anymore. There he is. There's a live shot last Christmas of Andrew Wilson and Mr. E in the background there. Wow, you're so great, Andrew. What a great guy. You're doing awesome. I like everything about you. I'm a great employee. Sorry, in your live stream today, I lost your video feed like 15 times, but I'm excellent. What a great employee. But I know that's the kind of guy that Andrew needs around him. Because I'll tell you one thing about Mr. E. There ain't no fucking olive jars worried about him opening them. I assure you. Andrew's hired a nice, safe employee there with Mr. E. There's zero chance that Mr. E's going to out-masculine Andrew Wilson. I think we could all agree on that, right? Andrew, today, woman, bring me my feminine vodka drink. Please bring me that. Make sure that it has the sweetener I like in it, woman. Is there any Bud Light left? The Dylan Mulvaney cans, any of those? Anyways, let me get my Virginia Slims here. And bring up the fucking clip. Was that a pop or a crack? Bring it up, you fuckers. Donate more money. Give me more money. Mr. E's like, yes, sir. I'll bring up the clip. Oh, you're so cool, smoking Virginia Slims. Wow, what a great guy. Oh, there he is. All caps. Classic Mr. E. Can't even be calm and analytical in the chat. All caps. Has to be emotional. Wait a minute. It appears as if I'm getting a message. 1 second here. Looks like Andrew's messaging me here. 1 sec. Rob, I didn't really fire you. It was a joke for the show. What are you doing? You're making an asshole of yourself. Wait. 1 second. Oh, hey, actually, I was just joking around this whole show. It was just we're just pulling you guys like, of course I didn't get fired. It was all just a big joke. I was just doing a little character work here. Did you guys believe that? Did you guys believe I was just, oh my God. You guys really believed that I thought I got fired there for a second. Yeah, I was just messing with you. Actually, Andrew Wilson's a great guy. I know he's not smoking Virginia Slims. Like, this whole Jargate shit was like a joke. It was what a joke, It's, of course, I mean, the people that are, playing clips of it, what a load of shit, right? Andrew could open a fucking jar of olives. Am I right? Like, we all know that, we know that. This is all, and let me tell you right now, I think the greatest guy in the business is Mr. E. I think that he's absolutely fantastic, man. That guy would do anything for anyone. Probably the best producer you ever see. Like, he's just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And I don't have anything negative to say about him. I think that he himself is a picture of masculinity. And I'll tell you this much. I'm not someone to be petty because he gets Employee of the Month. Like, the guy's fucking tremendous. He's earned it every single time. Oh man. What a great bit. What a great bit. Mr. Belay for $33.45 says silver spot prices closed at 33.45 ounces today. Did you know that silver is woven into Rob's new jar opening mat? Help with gripping those slippery lids. Head over to Rob's merch store to get your own jar opening mat today. Thank you, Mr. Belay. Hopefully someday silver goes up to like 10,000. We're only $40 away. I got to get going. So I'm going to lose. This guy wins. He's probably some rabid lefty. He wins for feminism. One step back has been taken, despite my promise that not one step back would be taken. We only achieved 88% of the goal. We lose. Nico Pluto wins. Austin Hall wins. Not So Erudite wins. Brianna Wu wins. We lose. We've taken a step back. It's a shame. It's a shame, really. So I'm going to go reevaluate my entire life while I look at this toilet, knowing that I've failed, that I'm a loser, that the Norberters failed this fine evening, because I, as their leader, failed us. I failed my wife. I failed the toilet. Oh! Coming in at the 0 hour, the fantastic, one of the patriarchy's greatest soldiers, Brock Van Wagner, for $50 for the patriarchy. There's always one thing you can count on when it comes to the patriarchy, that some white man somewhere is going to come through at the end to help other white men. Isn't that great? Thank you so much, patriarchy. Thank you, white privilege. And just to be sure, the great Robert Whaley comes through. Says, don't tell Nico. We won't tell Nico. I don't think that he's literate, so he can't read anyway, so don't worry about it. I am a failure at failing. The chat, the Norberters come through again. Just wanted to see me sweat a little. One more night that we could say, eat shit, Austin Hall, who's actually a fan of the show, but still eat shit. How about that, Austin Hall? Loser. Not tonight, baby. Mr. Ubercross for $10. Also a member of the patriarchy says, what's the goal? Honestly, fixing the toilet and reconsidering life makes sense. I question my decisions every day. Maybe the goal should be to stop putting wipes in the toilet. That's a goal that I choose to learn from. Well, we achieved our goal, and now, like the terrible, terrible grifter I am, I'm going to head out. I will not be streaming this weekend, unfortunately, because fortunately I'm going to be spending time with family and friends all weekend. It is the little town up the road where my wife's from's official festival that they have here around Memorial Day called Mayfest. So I will be celebrating Mayfest. With any luck, my son's going to be in the parade. I think he might be riding his grandpa's big rig and throwing candy out. So that'll be an experience. You guys are the best. I'm obligated to say one more time, Andrew Wilson never fired me. It was all a joke. I have to say that because people have been very concerned reaching out to me like, oh my God, how could he do that to you? He did not fire me. It sucks that I have to explain that joke, but I have to explain it because some people didn't get it. I thought that it was easy to read between the lines, but maybe I'm just a tremendous actor. Look out, Hollywood. Here I come. All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going down to look at this toilet. You guys are the best. If you give super chats while I'm heading out, that's okay. Remember, if you don't want your name shown there because you're too embarrassed for people to see on the live that you're giving money to a guy that throws wipes in the toilet, you can send to my Cash App at $RobNorr, or you can send to PayPal at RobertNorr, or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/RobNorr. I am out for the weekend. Wicked Wally, we stole his money again. $5 says, already sent this to Andrew. Make Crucible Jarhead camo shirts. Print money and thank me later. You're welcome. But Wally, we just want your money. You're the only money we want. Thank you guys so much. You're the best. I will see you all Monday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern. As always, have a good one.